Hey, everybody, and welcome back to Motorcycles and Podcakes, the official podcast of Motorcycles and Pancakes. You can find all things motorcycles and pancakes related on the Instagrams and the YouTubers. And today is our first remote podcast. We got a guest hanging out over, I think, in Denver, and we're just going to get right down to it. So if you saw my little story right now, you're like, what kind of cat's coming on the podcast? I don't even know what you're talking about. Well, you do now because, ladies and gentlemen, we got ourselves Brady, the Meerkat. What's up, brother?
How's it going?
Dude, it's going good. So, pretty excited to have you on, honestly. This has been kind of a thing you and I have been kind of
We've been
trying to
kind
get
of bouncing back and
into.
forth a little bit.
Right. It's like, hey, I'm home. I got time. And you're like, well, I'm going to be in the backcountry. And then you're like, hey, I got time. And I'm like, well, I'm out trucking. So, it's
Yeah,
kind of
because
one of
I
those
think the
weird
last
things.
time I said, "Hey, I'm ready to go," you were going up to British Columbia.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I went up
Yeah,
to Critters, the Get Lost Find Yourself moto camping trip. That was just absolutely everybody bing fantastic. It
yeah.
was a great time, man. So you in Denver? Is that what I hear?
Monument. It's 45
Oh,
minutes south of Denver. So yeah,
yeah, close enough, right?
pretty. I
So
mean,
you
for
just on
people,
a
especially people who don't know what Colorado looks like, yeah, it's the same thing.
yeah, for real. It's a square. You're there and there. There you go.
Right.
Right on, man. So so a lot of people know who you are, and then a lot of people don't know who you are. So what I
Yeah.
like to do, getting things kind of just rolling, is like let's get to know the man behind the helmet, right? That whole cliche thing. So I'm really kind of curious to know, where were you born? What was your upbringing like? Your family life like? Did you play sports or anything like that? Kind of curious to know.
Well, I was actually I was born in Kansas, but grew up in Colorado. We moved here when I was 6, so it's all I've ever known. But went to school here, and actually I'm a high school dropout. I went and got a GED when I was 17 and then joined the Marine Corps just after 9/11. So served in the Marine Corps for about a year. I got hurt when I was in infantry school, and so got discharged. Went back to school for a couple of years and then rejoined the Army as a combat medic and spent basically '05 to 2010 doing that, and got out in 2010, and I've been kind of bouncing around Colorado ever since, and started doing this kind of stuff part-time in 2015, 2016, and then life kind of happened, some stuff, COVID and some other stuff happened, and I kind of transitioned to doing this full time in basically 2021, and here we are.
Here we are, right? So going back, so you said you're a high school dropout, which I think is fairly common, right? And not everybody's path is going that way, right? So
Oh, not at all. Like
when
I have such an interesting thing of, I have a master's degree now, but I dropped out of high school.
no kidding.
That was really fun doing the GRE when I had never taken the SAT or ACTs.
Yeah,
They
that's
didn't know what to do with me.
oh, this guy, right? Okay.
Yeah, pretty
Well, that's
well,
kind of
they
cool
just
though.
like, because they have their little, like, checklist of how of getting people into grad school, and none of it made any sense for them because none of the check boxes worked. Like, I already had an associate's degree, I had a bachelor's degree, I had a good GPA and all that stuff in college, but I had never taken the SATs or ACTs, and it's like 1 plus 1 equaled tomato.
Equals tomato. I love it. That's kind of funny, man. So
So,
when
yeah.
you dropped out and then you're like, hey, I'm gonna go get my GED. At what point were you like, I'm gonna go in the Marine Corps and then I have to get my GED, or were you like, I don't know what I'm gonna do, and then they were like, hey, you got to do this,
This
or
was pre 9/11, so to join the military at the time, you had to have at least a high school diploma just to join. And
right,
so I had to have a GED before I could even process in. So I joined the Marines at 17. So I did my GED at 16, just after my sophomore year of high school. So
oh wow,
yeah, it's not hard. The GED is really easy. So that was not a problem, but it was just, I had to go through the little steps that they needed just for me to be able to join the military. Me joining the military had been the plan for years. And so I was already in the delayed entry program before 9/11 happened. So it was just a matter of, I shipped in November of 2001.
So going in the Marine Corps, was this like, every little kid, they watch those movies and they're like, get all their friends, say, let's go outside and play army or whatever. Was it
Yeah.
something from a little kid where you're like, oh my God, Marine Corps or whatever?
It's I don't remember if you served in the military or not.
I did not.
Okay, I just
My
wasn't
life
sure.
was taking me Sawyer. Yeah. My life
Life,
was taking me towards music and stuff at that point.
yeah. Um it's one of those things of it. The best description I think I've ever heard of the military is that it's all extremes. Like,
Okay.
it's the most fun things you'll ever do in your life and the most boring bullshit things you can ever imagine dealing with, all like rubbing shoulders. It's, you'll work with some of the smartest people you have ever met in your life and some of the dumbest people on the planet are all like right in the same place. There's no like
Okay.
average middle ground with anything in the military. And so you do have those really cool experiences where you're like, holy crap, I'm never going to get to do that again. And then you also have entire days or weeks where you're sitting around with nothing to do and just absolutely bored out of your skull. So it's a very unique experience. It's a lot like moving to a foreign country where they speak the same language
Okay.
because it's a completely different culture, but you all still understand each other.
That's actually I've been around a lot of veterans and a lot of people who have served even pre 9/11 or whatever, and that's kind of the same thing that they kind of say. It's you get in this environment, and unless you've been there, you don't understand it. And I
Yeah.
think the closest thing that I can say is, I played a lot of football and I coached a lot of football, so I understand that brotherhood. But I
It's
think
a
it's like,
close teamwork environment, yeah.
yeah, yeah. I would imagine though that battle buddies or whatever are just that times 1,000.
Well, the biggest difference is you're not just working together, you're living together. Because when
Right.
you're in a unit, you're in the barracks together. So, like, take that football team and then put them together for all their off time, their weekends are the only people that they can hang out with are other people on the team, and put them together for 3 years.
Oh,
Like,
right. Yeah. Okay.
yeah, you end up with a very close knit. You end up as family. The unit that I was in when I was in the army, I was in the same unit with the same people for 4 years. So by the time we were coming back from Iraq, we all knew each other so
Oh,
well. We were family, and so that's hard to describe to somebody who hasn't ever lived in that environment.
yeah. I couldn't even comprehend all of that stuff, for sure. So you got hurt in the Corps, and I think my buddy Sean and Brian listening to this would probably want me to ask at some point, like when you got discharged out of the Marine Corps, did they give you a giant box of crowns?
No, I did not get any gifts. Um,
No color crowns or anything.
no,
Okay.
you kind of learn how to, you figure out which flavor you like the most after like boot camp and stuff like that. But
Right.
no, yeah,
Okay. I had to throw that one in there for those guys.
I was
Um,
always partial to the orange ones.
these taste like Orange Crush.
Fanta, no,
Yeah, right. So you get out, and then you had what? You said you had a couple years
I was out for about
of
2
gap time.
years. I did an associate's degree and kind of got healed up and stuff, and then went back into the army.
Okay, so associate's degree. So what were you studying to get that?
Outdoor education.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay,
So I
cool. So
joked that I was a professional ski bum for 2 years.
is that a bad thing?
No, but ironically, that's the degree that I've probably used the most.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So
of
you get
all the
out.
things, that's the degree that I've used the skills in the most.
Isn't that weird? It's
I
kind of cool though. I mean, really.
Yeah.
So you get out, you got 2 years, you get this degree. And then at what point were you thinking like, was it another calling? Was it like, I need something more? Was it like something maybe you already predetermined when you got out of the Marine Corps? What led you
I
into
I
going into the
I
Army?
did my EMT basic while I was doing my associate's degree and loved it. And so I was work for the last year that I was in school, I was working on trying to find something to be able to do within medicine, within emergency medicine. And so I tested with some fire departments and stuff like that. Most of them, the problem that you have is you have to be 21 to really be a full certified firefighter. And I was still 2 years short of that. And because I graduated when I was 19. And so couldn't get on with the fire department. Trying to work for like AMR or one of those ambulance services is just crap. Um, you know, kept looking at it at this point, Iraq and Afghanistan are going on, and started looking at, well, if I joined the Navy, I could join as a corpsman, but I couldn't get guaranteed that I would serve with the Marines because I wasn't going to go get stuck on a boat somewhere.
Right.
And talked to the Army, and they were able to guarantee that I would serve as a medic. And then I could get unit of assignment guaranteed to at least know that I was going to like an infantry unit. And
Okay.
so let's see, graduated in May of '04 and then left for Army medic training in January of '05. So it took a few months between there to get all that figured out.
To get it figured out. And during that time, went in there and you really wanted to go that specific direction, right? You wanted to make sure
Yeah,
you served.
so the Army's kind of funny because there is no there used to be, but there's no combat medic MOS, like job field. The job field is healthcare specialist, but that's one of the largest career fields in the Army because it's covering everything from your medics that work in aid stations, at hospitals, in clinics. You can do a
Right.
ton of different things as that same career field. You're not guaranteed that you're going to a line unit and doing medic stuff. And so the hard part on that was trying to make sure that because I didn't want to just go and then be stuck working in a, auditory lab or something doing, hearing tests for 4 years.
Oh my gosh,
And
no.
so I did medic training, which is down in Fort Sam Houston in San Antonio, and got assigned to 4th Brigade, 10th Mountain Division, which at the time was based in Fort Polk, Louisiana. It's actually Fort Johnson now because they renamed a bunch of the southern bases.
Okay. Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. And yeah, so I got assigned to the 10th Mountain Division down there I got there in March or April of '05.
Okay. So when you got when you got in there and you got moving, you got into your job, right? So at what point were they like, "Hey, we're going to start gearing up for deployment"? Were you in there for a while, or was it pretty quick?
We knew we were going to deploy pretty quick. I mean, it's the 10th Mountain Division, which is the most deployed division in the U.S. Army. So
Oh, did not
they
know that.
created the unit to deploy. So we knew we were going somewhere. But we figured out a group of us. We were there for about a year because we deployed in March of '06 to Afghanistan.
Okay.
Uh,
And how long were you over there for in that
I
first
was in
month?
Afghanistan for 8 months.
Oh
So
wow.
it was kind of a weird thing because they deployed us as task forces. So a group of us went for 8 months, and then another group from the brigade went for 4 months. Just administrative stuff in the Army. It's the only reason they did it that way. But yeah,
Right.
it makes sense to
Yeah,
them.
that
It doesn't make sense to anybody else.
there's a lot of that goes on though, right? Not
It's
only in
very
the
Army of them,
military,
believe me.
right?
If it makes
So
sense, it's probably not the Army.
Okay. So how many times were you actually deployed then?
Twice.
Once? Okay. And
Twice.
then you got out, what about, what did you say, 4 years?
Well, no, I deployed twice.
Twice. Right,
Yeah.
right.
So I deployed in '06, and then I deployed again in '07, '08.
Okay. Okay. I thought I was getting confused, but yeah, I was right there.
No, you're fine.
So when you get back home, your last deployment, were you about done with that military career? Time to move on, or were you still like,
Iraq was ugly.
yeah?
So we went to Iraq from November of '07 until basically January of '09, and because that was part of the troop surge.
Right.
And so we were in an area right near what's called Sadr City in eastern Baghdad, and it was ugly. So by the time we got back from 13 months of that, we were all done. I actually got stop lost for the end of that deployment. So um, we I got back just before New Year's, and I was out 90 days later.
Oh wow. Okay. So that was
'Cause they had
quick.
to. They were holding me past my enlistment date, so they had to let me go as soon as we got back.
Okay. So then you get back, you get out, and then what was the next phase of your life from that point?
I went and finished my bachelor's degree because I only had about a year to do on that with the college classes that I had done, and then I went to the police academy.
Oh, no kidding.
Yep, I
Whole
was a
different
cop up in
firefighting.
Breckenridge.
Oh, I little truck driving thing here. I got a load. This is a long time ago, and I had to deliver to the Breckenridge Resort or whatever up there. And I remember
Oh
driving
god,
the truck
yeah.
up there, and I'm like, I'm driving through a neighborhood doing like these really sharp S curves going
There's
up
some
the hill.
sharp
I'm like,
turns going up the hill.
I was like, am I supposed to be here? I don't know. And
While
all of
I
a
was
sudden, it's like,
working
oh,
there,
there
they
it
had
is.
a truck pulling a, windmill turbine blade.
What?
They were going up over the pass to
Oh,
because they
okay.
built windmills up in the center part of Colorado,
Yeah.
and he didn't follow the route that he was supposed to follow, and so he high centered it in the traffic circle in the middle of town. They had to bring a crane out and, like, pick
Oh,
him
I
up,
bet.
scoot him sideways, pick him up, scoot him sideways, like, it took hours.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
Couldn't
that's not a
imagine.
town to be driving semis through.
No, it really is not. That was just one of those things, and when you get up there, everybody's like, "What are you doing
Yeah,
here?" Like, "Mm,
probably.
I got a load here for you guys." Yeah,
Yeah.
they're remodeling or something at the time,
Oh,
potentially.
they're constantly
Yeah.
building stuff up there. I mean, it doesn't even look like what it was when I was working there.
Oh, I can imagine that.
But yeah,
So, yeah,
I was
my
there
youngest
from
son.
basically 2010 to 2014.
Okay. So the police the whole time up
Yeah.
there. Man, that's cool. I didn't know that about you. I knew a little bit about you, but definitely not that.
I mean, it's one of those things of that and then my government job stuff I don't really talk a whole lot about just because who
Mhm.
cares?
Well,
But yeah.
inquiring minds. So getting up there. So what made you kind of leave? So I'm assuming with your time frame, I might be totally wrong here, but with your time frame, you went from maybe law enforcement and hopping on the motorcycle. Was that
Kind
about
of.
right?
I learned how to ride a bike when I was in my, graduate school, so 2016.
Okay. So 2016. And that's perfect little segue because I'm actually very curious to how you did find riding and motorcycles.
Harley Davidson was doing a program where vets and first responders could do their MSF course for free. And so
So
I
you're
was
like,
able to
hey,
sign up and do the MSF course, $500 course for nothing.
no kidding. Okay.
Yeah.
So, so it's when you signed up for that. I mean, obviously, you had to be like, I want to do this, right?
I had always kind of wanted to at least learn how to ride a motorcycle, whether
Mhm.
it became a thing or not, I didn't really care about, but I'd always kind of had that in the back of my head of like it'd be neat to know how to ride a bike.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, dude. Like for real, that's riding is man. It's awesome, right?
Yeah, and I
Very
fell in love
therapeutic,
with it.
very adventurous. Right. It just that happens. You get on those two wheels and you're just like riding, and you're just like, dude. This is phenomenal. I love this.
Yeah.
So you get done with the course, and then were you just like, "Yep, I need me a bike."
Pretty much. I would have to look at what I did, but I think I bought my bike a month later, maybe, my first bike.
Dude, that's quick.
Yeah, I mean, it was not long for sure.
Right. So, what did you buy? What was your first bike?
My very first bike was a Triumph Scrambler 900.
Whoa,
So
not the route I thought
not
you
the
were
new
going.
one, the old one.
Right. Still not the route I thought you were gonna say, right? I thought you were gonna be
No,
like, "Oh,
but I mean, like, when I pictured the bikes that I wanted to ride, I loved the ADV segment. Um, I just didn't know enough about it, and honestly, as a beginner bike, an ADV bike is not necessarily the best idea just because they're all really tall.
right." Yeah, well, tall and, heavy. And I know some of
Generally,
the
I mean, some of them aren't, but yeah,
yeah,
generally.
yeah, I know, like, some of those Harleys and stuff, they're just their weights are ridiculous, you know?
Well, I learned to drive on a Street 500, which is just like the most awful piece of crap you could ever imagine trying to learn how to drive on because it's heavy, it's low, its turning radius is like 600 feet. Like it's just it's not a good bike.
Turning radius is 600 feet. Dude, that's
Well, I
freaking
mean, it's
hilarious.
those Harleys, your lock to lock is like dink.
Right, yeah. Yeah,
So
I
when you're
know,
trying to do the course, you're trying to do the U-turns and stuff, and the thing just doesn't turn.
you're like, yeah. Oh, yeah, I know. I've ridden some Harleys and, like, Vulcans and things like that, and I know on some of those bikes when you're, like, you're slowing down and you're trying to get into a turn or whatever, you're riding and you're like, "Fight that thing into the corner," and you finally get it in the corner, like, "Okay, I gotta get out," and you're, like, trying to fight the thing out. It's just
The
man.
only other real Harley that I've spent any time on is the Pan America, and
Oh, yeah.
it's a fun motor, but I'm not a huge fan of it for an ADV bike.
It's not an ADV bike.
It's a
Let's
touring
let's be
bike.
real. Yeah, so I rode one at the Giant Loop Ride. I took it out
Yeah.
for a demo, and of course, we were very restricted on where we can go. And I remember I pulled out of the Crystal Crane Hot Springs. I made that right turn on the Highway 20, and I kind of got after it a little bit, not a lot, but I got after it. And I was just riding, and even coming through the gravel, getting to the highway, I was really kind of okay. I don't like where the peg location is, and
No,
maybe it's just because I'm
ergonomically, it is
so used.
not set
Yeah,
up well.
right. And I kind of was trying to be conscious because I was like, well, maybe it's just I read the AT-AT, right? That's my Africa Twins name. So I'm used to that. So is this just weird because I'm so used to that? And I bebopped down the road, I don't know, for whatever. And then we got down to this little abandoned store where we were supposed to turn around in this little gravel parking lot. And I was standing up and I was trying to give it a little throttle and try to get that back end to come out, just kind of feel it. And then we rode back and I actually got really after it that time. I got all the way to 55 miles an hour plus a whole bunch. And I almost topped that thing out. I was so close to topping it out, and I saw a car
It's a
coming the other
fun
way.
motor.
Yeah, I saw a car coming the other way that was all white, and I'm like, "Oh, don't be a cop.
Oh god.
Don't be a cop. That's not gonna be good." But it wasn't. Anyway, so
Yeah.
I almost topped that out. When I got back, I was just like my initial impression of it is a sport tour bike. It's a phenomenal sport tour bike, but it is not an adventure bike. It just
No,
doesn't feel like
I
one.
rode it at, Overland Expo, and I stood up on it, and I just tried to do a couple, like, big circles through the dirt, and I realized
Mhm.
I couldn't touch the bike except for my shins trying to when
Oh,
I'm
no
standing on the
kidding.
pegs. Like, there was nothing to grip with your knees. It was the weird like, it was just the weirdest ergonomics.
I don't remember having that thought. I just remember when I was standing up, it was just I tried to lean it over so my knee was on the tank, and I was trying to make it like a left. I'm trying to give it a little throttle for that back end to
It's
come
just
out a little bit,
weird.
but yeah, it just like I said, it's a phenomenal sport tour bike. But if you're gonna go do like I don't know, you're gonna go across Mongolia or something, don't take that.
No.
Dream trip. So,
Right.
so we're into like the motorcycle talk now. So you got your bike and you're kind of doing you're learning, right? So were you
Yeah.
taking any other classes or you just like, I've got the skill set, now I'm gonna go out here and practice?
I took other classes later on. In the first year of riding, I did very light off-roading. Um, and then I did a pretty big touring trip with my girlfriend at the time. We went up through we went up to Washington and stuff like that and came back down through like the top of California, Nevada and all that. But that was basically all pavement. Um,
Mhm.
there was a little bit of dirt in Nevada that we hit honestly by accident.
Finding dirt in Nevada? That's weird.
Yeah. Well, so do you know where Pyramid Lake is? It's a
Um,
Paiute Indian reservation.
okay, I know where the res is, yeah.
Yeah, so we ended up on that accidentally because coming over from California, right at the border, the road just turned to dirt, and we didn't know it, but the road was washed out on the Indian reservation, and so
Oh, no.
we ended up having this whole drama that day of like we pulled into Reno and her bike was acting up, and I almost ran out of gas, like all
Oh my
this
gosh.
stuff. Oh yeah, well the Triumph does not have a big tank, so
Okay.
I think 130 miles was when my fuel light would typically come on. I
Oh,
think it's a
man, that's not
4-gallon
far.
tank. It's not a big
That's
tank.
not far. Yeah.
Yeah,
No, that's
and,
not far at all.
so, yeah, so, I mean, it was a fun trip, but there was definitely some drama involved,
Yeah,
and, I realized pretty much in the first year, year and a half that I was rapidly exceeding the off-road capabilities of that bike,
okay.
and, so started looking to upgrade to a more traditional ADV bike.
And then when you decided, "Hey, I need something a little bit more gooder," what did you go for?
I ended up trading to a 990 Adventure.
Oh, no kidding. Very
Yep.
nice. Yeah. That is a little bit of a jump too, I think, and just the performance-wise of the 2 motorcycles.
Oh, yeah, the
Yeah.
going from I don't remember how many horsepower the 900 was, but, uh, 70 maybe
Yeah.
to, right around 100, and then just also the 990s. I mean, it's a KTM, like, it's a
Right.
rocket ship no matter what,
Yeah, I
and
think that's one thing that a lot of people misunderstand, like, when they're getting into a motorcycle, they'll be like, "Oh, dude, you had a 900, now you're just getting a 990. That's nothing, no big deal." And they don't understand the manufacturer, and
very
you get
different.
on this yeah, you get on the 900 and you're like, "And we're going."
Well,
And you get
and
on
the
the other one
900,
and you're just going.
the scrambler was 5 gears, so there's more than once where you're sitting there at 80, like, absolutely floored, like, I'm not going anywhere.
Oh,
And then, like,
man,
one of the first
right?
times I'm on the highway on the 990 and I go to pass somebody and I look down, I'm doing 105, it's like, "Oh, crap, okay. This is not a good idea."
Right? Oh my gosh, yeah, dude, those KTMs are just rockets for
Oh, they're so
sure.
much fun, though.
I know. Uh, is that your current bike?
No,
You got something else now,
yeah, so I've been on a Tenere since, September of
right?
21.
Okay, okay. And so did you take the KTM all the way to the time to get the Tenere?
Well, I had 2 KTMs. I had the 990, and life stuff caused me to trade that, and then I ended up getting a 690 that was kind of adventured out, and you had that for I really kinda ended up with that for just about a year, just for whatever reason,
Mhm,
and then got the
okay.
Tenere in 21.
That's the T7 Tenere,
Yep.
not the Super T. My dad,
The
he's got
the
the
Super
Super
Teneres
T
are
and the
fun, but god,
T7.
they are big friggin' bikes.
Oh, they are. He goes into his garage and he's like, "What do I wanna ride today? Am I gonna go more
I wish I
road
had
for the
that problem.
1200 or" you know, it's like, Jesus, dude, awesome. So,
Yeah.
dude, so anybody that's familiar with my channel or Instagram or whatever knows I got a buddy called the Neighbor Dave, and that's just what I call him, the Neighbor Dave. So Neighbor Dave has a 690,
Yeah.
and he went and bought it, and it was not the adventure. I think they have a 690 adventure, I
No, they've
believe.
only had the 690 Enduro, but people have done a bunch
Yeah,
of
okay, maybe
kits and
that's what it
stuff to
is.
turn them into adventure bikes. That's what mine had. I had a rally kit on mine and stuff, So it was set up basically as an adventure bike.
Right. So he went, I think he added, dude, he's added a ton. But one of the things I know is he went and got a new front wheel made. So he has a
Really?
21-inch front wheel, and there was something else he had to do to it,
Hmm.
but he got that bigger wheel on the front of it, and he says it makes all the difference in the world, just having that
Well,
bigger wheel just to catch.
the 690 has a 21-inch front wheel. I mean, mine
Silence
had
here.
Woody's wheels
But
on it. So yeah, I mean, who knows?
yeah,
Maybe.
maybe his was like not the adventure, but I know it was a 690, and I know that he had the
Sure.
small wheels on it when he bought it. It was almost
Oh,
kind of,
maybe it was a supermoto originally.
yeah, it might have
Well, they
been.
do
And
do
like I
that.
said, he went and got the 21 on it, and he's done a lot to it for sure. But he loves
Oh,
that thing.
they are eminently customizable. Like there is almost no limit to the amount of stuff that you can do to them.
Yeah, yeah. It's we go out and ride, and I'm just looking at it. I'm like, that from what you bought it to what it is now, dude. It's rad. So how did you like it? I don't. I remember you were. So I'm like 6'3", 6'4". So I remember I was
I'm
a little bit
short.
taller than you. Are
I'm
you?
5'9". I have a 32-inch
Okay.
inseam, but I'm 5'9". So my 690 was a 37-inch seat height. So it was a solid,
Oh,
one cheek at a time and toes down on one leg.
one cheeker.
Um, probably half of my falls were just deciding to put the wrong leg down.
Mm-hmm.
So I really enjoyed that bike though. It was a super fun bike. It was way better. It wasn't a great travel bike.
Right.
I did several long road trips on it and it'll do it, but it's not fun. Like anything after 200, 300 miles, you're not having fun on that bike anymore.
You
But when
know.
you're in like the gnarly off-road stuff, it'll go through stuff that's just stupid.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. That it kind of goes back. My dad and I, we have this conversation all the time. Light bike versus heavy bike, right? So he kind of goes around and he tells me, "Hey, you need a lighter bike. You're getting out and doing this, and you're doing that. You need a lighter bike." And I'm in the mindset of like, my lighter bike is the Africa 1100. That is my
Yeah.
light bike, right? I treat it like a 250. I'll go out with Critter and Carl and all those guys, and we'll just go down single track or whatever. And I'm like, I'm right behind you. You
Oh
know,
yeah. I mean, I did dual
they're
sport events on my 700. Like
yeah, right, right. And so sometimes, I mean, you get around, you're like, like maybe a lighter bike would be a little bit better, right? Like I
my
understand it, but
my rule of thumb on that stuff is take the lightest bike that you're willing to ride the distance on.
well, that goes down to kind of where I was going with that little statement is I think there's an argument for both, but there's no right answer. I
No, not
think
at all.
what you want to do dictates your motorcycle. I love long trips. I like to just jump on and just go. So I want to hit gravel, I want to hit trails, I want to hit dirt, I want to hit sand, and then there's going to be pavement. And I want to be able to be comfortable doing 75, 80 miles an hour in the middle of the desert on a bike. And one of the best examples that I always bring up is like on our way to Giant Loop, uh, Critter and I did this big long multiple day thing just to get there.
Yeah, I saw
And
some
we
of the
went
videos
down,
from that.
yeah, and we went down to Winnemucca and we met up with Grace. And on our way down there, man, we got hit with some weather. And we
Oh
had
yeah.
major wind coming through, and it was just pushing everybody around. And Critter was like, done. We got to Winnemucca. His helmet was off. He's like, I'm done. We had like another 50 miles to go.
He was on
And he
a
was like,
450?
250L.
Oh crap.
Lucy's a little 250.
So he's a sail.
So I know. So we're just bouncing down 95, US 95 South. The wind is just brutal, like I said. And he's leaning and he's just fighting that wind for everything he can. And he's getting tired. He's kind of getting a little bit grumpy. And he says he looks in his rearview mirror at me. And I got one hand, I'm kind of looking around, messing with my helmet. And the wind was like not that big of a deal on the big bike, right? So I'm kind of like, that's the perfect example, right? So he's got the little baby bike, I've got the big bike, but it's what do you want to do is the correct answer. If you want to dual sport and that's all you're going to do, and you're going to trailer to events and you're going to ride single tracks all the time, dude, grab those little
You're gonna
bikes.
probably
You're gonna,
enjoy a smaller bike a lot more.
yeah,
But,
100%.
my not enough bike because it makes the traveling part of it miserable.
Yeah.
On the T7 I mean, I
Ooh.
did an iron butt on my T7. Like, it wasn't a ton of fun, but but I still did it, and it was totally doable.
The Iron Butt is still something I have not done yet. I'm
It
like, I
it it
want to.
it was fun to do once. I will
Right.
probably never do
That's
one
it.
again. It was
Right.
neat
Right.
to have, like, the bragging rights of, "Yes, I rode from Colorado to Yuma, Arizona at a day,"
Right. Right.
but it
That
sucked
is
at
cool.
portions.
Oh, I can imagine. I have to get a new seat before I do that anyways. My dad,
It's
he has a buddy that passed away. His name's Ken, and major, major motorcycle guy. And, I don't know how many, if at all, but I remember of any, of the Iron Butts that he actually did, but I remember his license plate cover said, "Hey, Iron Butt guy." What is that? Said, "Hey, Iron Butt guy, I sleep in hotel rooms." Like, "You guys could have that. I'm gonna go take a nap." This thing was hilarious.
e everybody has their own version of what adventure means.
All right. That is crazy. So, we kind of alluded to it. So, at what point you started taking these trips, right? And I think for a lot of us
2020
that
was probably the first time where I did, like, a couple of big trips back to back. You know,
okay.
I had done this trip in that was 2017 when I went with my girlfriend and did a big trip. 2018, we tried to do part of the Colorado BDR and broke one of the bikes on, like, the 2nd day and had to come back. Um,
Uh, what?
Clutch shifter stopped working, so she was having to
Oh,
hold it
okay.
in gear
Okay.
just to get it to drive. So
I
we
was
limped it
thinking
into
like
Gunnison and
frame.
got a U-Haul.
Oh man, that
Yeah,
is an
that was fun.
adventure.
Yeah, that was an adventure for sure. But,
Yeah, dude, for real.
yeah, so 2020, I was on the 690, and with COVID, I ended up just burning a bunch of my vacation time, and so I ended up doing the Arizona BDR, the Colorado BDR, and the Continental Divide Trail all that year.
Oh wow, that's pretty rad. Is that about the time that you decided like, hey man, I kind of want to do this full time? Like,
Kind of, near the end of 2020, at the time I was, stuck working from home, just slowly going insane in my bedroom because I'm having to make my bedroom my office and everything else, and yeah. And I got accepted by a veterans group to hike the Continental Divide. So it's a
oh,
veterans
cool.
organization called Warrior Expeditions, and they sponsor veterans to hike the major through hikes.
Okay.
And so in early 2021, I set off on the CDT on foot. And bec because of job stuff, they wouldn't allow me to take leave or even do, like, an unpaid leave of absence, and so I ended up selling my house and quitting my job, and then basically just saying, "When I finish the CDT, it's gonna be a complete reset, like, we'll see where I end up." And
That
did that.
is awesome.
Yeah, that was kind of the turning point of, like, I don't know what's gonna happen, but we're gonna give this a try because I gotta do something. I gotta do something just to help my mental health,
Yeah.
and, ended up having to come off the trail in June because I hurt my ankle, and so I was halfway up through Colorado. I had to come off the trail and spent a few months working in Denver, just kind of figuring stuff out, and made the decision to, I had enough money from selling my house and stuff like that to try and at least do what I wanted for the next year. And that was where I got the idea to try and do all of the BDRs in a year.
Dude, that is awesome. I mean, you just resonated with like everybody right there. Like, oh man,
Well,
I'm in.
I
Let's
was
go.
kinda doing the math because I wasn't sure if anybody had done it before. Chad Warner, I can't remember what he doesn't really do YouTube very much, but, Chad Warner did it the year before, where he did 10 of them in a year. But he was sponsored by the BMW Motorcycle Owners Association to do it,
Okay. Mhm.
and so he did that the year before. And it's like, so I'm pretty sure I can, it's possible. It's just a matter of trying to get the timing right because the routes are so spread out and they have different conditions all the time that, you know, some of it's just luck. And
Oh, yeah.
so I started the planning process for that in probably December and set off April.
Wow, that's not a lot of planning time, really, for
It
that kind of an event.
Well, but I mean, I had done all the traveling and stuff on the bike already, so I already knew how to camp and live off of the bike for, up to a month at a time. So, at that point, it's the same thing. You're doing resets when you're in town.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Hitting his grocery stores, hotel rooms,
Yeah.
showers.
I mean, hiking the CDT was the best training for something like that because you're learning how to just live off of what you can carry on your back. And
Right.
so on the motorcycle, the main advantage is you don't have to carry it.
Not on your back, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
No, that's
so yeah.
that's actually a conversation my dad and I have had because if you listen to the podcast with Papa Cakes on it, he's a big mountain climber guy. And so he has this mentality of being a very minimalist. So everything has to be light and teeny tiny and just fit into this little backpack, right? Because that's what's going to go on, and he's going to go climb Denali or Aconcagua or Mount
Yeah.
Hood or whatever. So he kind of has this mentality of, going on the motorcycle that way. And when we went up into Canada, he was like, I mean, I have a motorcycle, so I guess I can just take a cot with me. He doesn't have to put it on his back. So he started
It
bringing
on
the
the
cots.
on the bike, it's very similar to backpacking. The biggest difference is the weight doesn't matter as much as the size does. Like, the
Right.
packability of it is more important
Hmm.
than necessarily the weight, but it's
Right.
still the thing of, like, the rule that I try and follow when I'm packing is if I'm not using it nearly every day and it's not emergency equipment, I don't need it.
No, exactly. I think that's a lot of people's deal. And I'm guilty 100% of overpacking.
Oh,
I'm
I was
like,
giving Ben crap when he did, I think it was the Washington BDR where he packed way too much stuff because he kept saying in his video of it weighs almost nothing and I have space for it. It's like, well,
right.
coming from the military, the rule is 70 pounds of lightweight equipment is still 70 pounds.
The obvious things hit you like that, right?
Yeah.
70
And like
pounds,
when I
still
set out
70
on the
pounds.
California BDR initially, I had too much stuff. I had too much camera gear. And so I ended up mailing a bunch of stuff home from the California BDR because I was just like, I don't need this.
Right. Well, that's pretty good. Just
But
realizing
you
that you
gotta
have
you gotta be willing to have that realization of like, I don't need to carry this.
right, right. So, what was your first super long trip? Because you said you were already looking at, doing all these BDRs, but you were like, "Well, I've already been gone for a month before. I already know what it's like to live on the bike for a month."
Our trip in 2017 was 2 weeks, 2 weeks, two and a
Okay.
half weeks, something like that.
Mhm.
Um, the CDT took me a month.
Okay.
Um, I riding down, I rode to Arizona and did the Arizona BDR, so that took 2 weeks. I had
Mhm.
done several like multi-week trips, and then hiking the CDT, I was gone for 3 months. So
Oh, wow, okay. Cool.
yeah, we started in April, and I had to come off the trail in June.
Right.
So
Okay.
you know, be being on the move for that period of time was not a big deal. It was more a matter of, can you not break anything? Can you not get hurt? Can you, you know, ride that distance?
Mhm.
Because it's not a
Yes.
it's not I don't view it as like a continuous trip. You can take days off. I didn't have like a super set schedule. Like you can take rest days, you can refit, you can fix stuff, you know.
Right. So, for me, we have a couple things that are coming up that I can't really talk about at the moment. But I've been really trip planning and thinking about what's coming up, and um, you really just kind of said it there because a lot of people look at it as this major trip, right?
No, you have to
And
break it
you're
up.
right.
You have
And
to break it
so,
up into sections that are manageable.
yes, because one thing that I think I'm really good at because I have this massive career as a truck driver and I'm over the road, whatever.
Yeah.
So it's kind of the same thing. I can go out for multiple weeks or a month or whatever, but it's not a month trip. Like, yeah, I was gone this long, but it's almost broke down into, the loads, right? So I took this load from A to B, done, right? And I grabbed this load, whatever, and then I have to reset my hours, and that gives me time to whatever, work on the truck or hang out, go sightsee or whatever. But it's kind of the same thing while you're just talking about. It's just, you take all these different trips and they're just multiple trips in one giant time frame is essentially what it
I
is.
mean, yeah, so 20 that was 22. So 2022, I was on the road for 233 days.
Wow. Okay.
But I never planned any part of that trip longer than about 5 days out.
Yeah.
I never carried more than about 3 days of food with me. I never looked other than for, like, weather and closures and stuff, I never looked at the route more than about 3 days out because it's irrelevant.
It's
I'm
actually, yeah.
300, 400 miles away. There's no point in me looking at Idaho when I'm in Arizona. It doesn't matter.
No,
And I
that it
think
does
that's where
not.
people fall into that thing of it becomes overwhelming for them because they're looking at
Mhm.
the end of the trip from the beginning and it's not, like hiking the CDT. You can't look at Idaho when you're in New Mexico. That's 4 months away. So you just look at what's the next week.
Yeah. Or
Where's
the
my
next
next
day.
town stop? That's
Hmm.
manageable. I'm
No,
4 days
absolutely.
from this town. I can do that. If you start looking at the whole thing, you're done. You will overwhelm yourself instantly.
Oh, without a doubt. I think my biggest thing is I overpack food, you know.
That's
I,
pretty
I
easy to
I'm
do.
very yeah, I'm
People feel
very
like
like
they need to
I
have
got
the entire
5 days.
trip's worth of food with them,
Yes,
and you
I'm
don't.
guilty of that.
You can
Right.
stop in a grocery store. It's not a b I
Weird,
almost
right?
never use the, freeze-dried food.
The boil
Um,
bags.
yeah, from doing the CDT and stuff, you don't ever use those. You use, like, the, rice sides that they sell where you just pour boiling water in it, and it makes
Mhm.
rice with, like, chicken broccoli flavor or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
you don't have to. I mean, on the bike, I'll carry those, Campbell's chunky soup cans because, like, one of those is a great meal,
Yeah.
and all you have
Yeah.
to do is heat it up.
Pour it over some rice. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been into kind of getting outside of that, like getting in more like actual cooking when we're out on the bike,
I've
and
never been
it's
much of a foodie, so for me to kinda, like, sit down and camp and try and, like, cook a meal doesn't
Mhm.
hold a whole lot of interest to me. It's just not my thing.
I think for me it's I'm trying to look ahead at some of the things that I got going on and like I need to be in better shape. I need to do a little lifting just in case, you tip the bike over, easier to get up.
Yeah.
But also like I look at the cooking as an aspect of fueling the body, right? So it's you get calories from those boil bags and stuff, but it's not necessarily the best thing. So stopping off the grocery store, maybe rice with chicken and whatever other sauce you want to put into it. It's kind of something that I've been kind of getting into. And again, kind of getting spoiled going back to the truck driving because now I can think about this. I'm like, I can do this in the truck too. So
Yeah.
I go back
Yeah,
and forth.
if you can cook it out of a backpack, you can cook it anywhere.
Right. Yeah. It's actually been kind of fun. I did one of these like curry things. I made this chicken curry up at the Critters Camp out up there. It's people are like, the the smells really good. What do you got there? And they're eating their boil bags. And I'm like,
Yep.
dude, like chicken curry. What do you think? Yeah,
I
those
know
get
I know
poop.
quite a few people that, like, when they're camping and stuff, they're just like, "I'm gonna make some ramen and go to sleep." It's like, that's fine for a week, but not for living. Like, you
Right,
just
months and
can't.
months. No, man.
Yeah.
You need a little more than that. And the other thing that I am, like, horrible about overpacking, and I don't know if you can actually overpack this, is water. I will just put I got a thing here,
That
to put
that's
water here,
very
to put water
individual.
here. Yeah.
There's I can't think of too many times where I haven't been carrying enough water, because I do pretty good about trying to make sure that I have always have water with me.
Yeah.
Probably the closest I ever came was in Arizona on section 1, because I ended up giving some of my water to some people that I ran into along the border. Um,
Okay.
I ran into 2 people coming
Mm.
across the border who were 9 plus miles from anything and had no water.
Oh,
And
geez.
so I gave them both probably a liter each and called help for them. And so when I got later on in the section, it was like 105, and I'm trying to get through, the off-road stuff. And I it's the only time I've had to take my body armor off because I was worried that I was overheating. And I'm like,
Yeah.
if I don't do this, I'm not going to be able to get out of here. And so I rode out of there without my armor on. And but I made the statement to myself of, if I run out of water, I am calling for help,
Oh,
because
100%, yeah.
I knew I was pretty close. I still had water when I got out to the pavement, so I was fine. But you have to be, especially when you're solo, you have to have the recognition of, there's risks you just can't take.
Mhm.
And if you need to call for help, do it. Like don't hesitate to either call for help or, hit the button on your in reach or whatever. Like, you have to be able to recognize when you're not going to get out of something by yourself.
I think that's probably one of the tougher lessons for people to learn who are looking to do adventures on their own. Um, I've been trying to train my mind a little bit by doing stuff by myself out here in the Pacific Northwest, and I'll go on rides. And I actually did this one video, like the day it all went wrong or something like that, and I tipped the bike over. It was just a day, dude. Everything went wrong that day.
I've
And
had
I
those
went
days.
down, yeah, and I went up this trail, and it just started getting overgrown, 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 and I'm like, when am I going to turn around? Right? And I
See, yeah,
remember,
you have to have that already in your head of, if
yeah.
this happens, like, you just have to take your ego out of it, because you just
Oh,
have to look at
yes.
it and go, I'm not doing this by myself. I'm turning around and
Yeah.
finding another way.
Right. So I got up there and I actually just boink, I tipped over and broke some things on the bike, and I was just like, okay. And then a part of that video that you don't see is I was kind of frustrated and it was hot that day. Not 105 hot, but it was going to be like that. But I think at the
Well,
time
even
we
in
were
the
pushing probably
90s, you're
mid
working hard
90s.
off
Yeah.
road. Like, it gets hot.
Yeah, for real. And the thing that you didn't see on the video is I shut everything off for a while and I rode like just gravel and I just on my own in my head, right? So I was just like, if I was on this particular adventure or that particular adventure, would have I gone that far? Right? Because now I know I'm just down the street and I got cell service and I'd be like, hey man, come grab my pickup and bring me, meet me here or whatever, right? But
Yeah.
then I was like, I got to eliminate that out of my head. Would have I even like when I got up going on that road, I kind of saw very quickly. I was like, "Ooh, this road." That's probably if I was by myself when I should have turned around. But again, or by myself on an adventure, anyways.
Yeah.
But I was just kind of like, "Well, I'm not that far from home, so let's just keep
When
going,
your
right?"
safety
You
nets
know?
start disappearing is when those
Yeah.
become different decisions. Like,
Oh
for
yeah.
example, like, the Northeast BDR is super gnarly in some certain areas. And I ended up linking up with another guy on a 450, and we rode the route together just because it was better to do it. And there was a couple of times where it's like, if I was by myself, I would have turned around.
Oh,
but
no
I know
kidding.
that I have help.
Yeah.
I know that I have somebody to help me out with getting out of here, and so it's a different level of calculation.
I think
There
that
was a
is
couple of times I hit snow in a couple of areas when I was doing the BDRs, and it's like, I'm not gonna keep pushing. Like, if I had 2 other people with me, I could absolutely get through this, but I'm
yeah,
not gonna exhaust myself or risk, sticking the bike in a position where I'm not gonna be able to get it out by myself.
pushing the bike to, get through the snow just to find more snow. I
Yeah.
think we've all done that. You're like, "Oh, it's just a
I
cool section."
I had to divert around a big section of Idaho in 22 because the snow was still way down low. And, I was just looking at it going, I could get through this. I could get through probably the next mile of it. But if it's 8 miles of it, there's no freaking way. Like, why am I going to fight my way through this?
The next 8 miles that are still going uphill too.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, that's a little much. I think the ego thing is a very good thing that I've been able to get rid of,
that's
my
probably what
writing
gets
is.
people in trouble the most.
Yeah, no, without a doubt, and I think at one point in time, I was probably that guy that would have been in trouble, but I think, a
Oh, I
little
think we
older
all
we
have
get.
been at some point.
Yeah, the older I get, the more rational I think I get, and, knowing my capabilities, when to push them, when not to push them, even by myself sometimes, I'm just ripping down, like, a gravel road or something, and I'll look down, I'm, like, doing 75, I'm like, "Yeah, I should probably not be doing this," you know?
Well, so I did LA Barstow to Vegas, the dual sport ride
Okay.
in at the end of 22. And there was stuff on that. There's absolutely no way that I would have been doing it if I was by myself or if I had luggage on the bike. Because
The
because
luggage
even the
thing,
easy
yeah,
routes on that route are super gnarly. It's a dual sport ride. And
yeah.
so there was a ton of stuff where it's like if I was by myself or if I had luggage on the bike, I would have turned around 10 miles ago. But, you have to have that constant like evaluation of the risks to see,
Yeah.
should I still be doing this? Should I still be going?
Dude, Barstow, like, I'm just again through driving and stuff, I'm pretty familiar with Barstow and that whole area. So you went from Barstow to Vegas, and that must have just been
Well,
like
no, it
foot of
starts in
sand.
Palmdale.
Oh, even better,
So
right?
it's a
Yeah,
2-day event. So you go from Palmdale to Barstow the first day, and then you go from Barstow to Vegas the second day, and it's 90+% dirt roads, off road.
right.
And a lot of it's those
Yeah.
power line roads and stuff, but I mean, some of that is super gnarly. And
Power line
the
roads scare me. It's-
dude, the second day was a 40-mile sand wash. It
oh my gosh.
sucked. Like, I really enjoyed the first day. The second day was just literally kicking yourself in the nuts for, like, 6 hours. It
Oh
sucked.
my god. 40 miles of sand wash. Oh boy.
Barstow, that was going into Barstow, and the parking lot in
Yeah.
Barstow was just carnage. I didn't get any of it on video because most of my cameras were dying by then, but, it was just trailers everywhere with, like, smoked clutches and all sorts
Oh, I
of broken
bet.
bikes, and I had to stop
Oh
and
my
help a guy on a
gosh.
690 who had broken his handlebar clamps off because he'd hit the backside of a wash at, like, 40 and basically gone through his dash.
Oh my gosh. He pulled a Travis.
Yeah, pretty well, the first day I had to help helicopter evacuate a guy who knocked himself unconscious going up one of the hills.
Dude, what?
We
That's
never nobody
crazy.
saw him fall, so we don't even know what happened, but, like, I rolled up on him and he was, still fully unconscious.
Oh my god. That's gotta be a
So,
little spooky,
I
you
mean,
know?
as a medic, so I at least have that
Yeah.
aspect of it, but it's not any fun to be like, "Oh, he's really out. Okay, like, we need to call for help, guys. He's not getting out of here by himself."
I couldn't even imagine that. That's actually worst case
So
scenario, and that's
I
probably
I've
something I
always
need to
said, like,
probably train a little
riding
for.
solo in the backcountry, my worst possible thing that I could do is knock myself out. Because I have
Yeah.
my inReach, it's tracking me and all that, but if I'm not there to be able to, like, hit the button, it's gonna take a long time for somebody to realize, like, "Hey, he's not moving."
Yeah, and then how many people take, the InReach or the Zoleo or whatever you're using and put it on their motorcycle,
I've had that
and it's like,
conversation with people. If I'm
man,
just touring on the road, I don't have a problem with mounting it to the bike. but if you're off-road, it needs to be on your body.
I would even
Especially like
disagree with you
Colorado
on
and
the
stuff,
road.
there's plenty of areas where you could end up several hundred yards from your bike pretty easily.
Yeah, dude, I get that. But I think on the road, I think no matter what, if you have one, it needs to be on your person because it doesn't take anything for you to be ejected from your motorcycle. Your motorcycle
And
goes
now the
left, you go
battery life
right,
on
you
them
know?
is so good, there's no excuse for like, "Oh, I need to charge it while we're riding,"
Right.
or like, no, they last
Yeah.
several days.
Right, right. Charge it once, twice, maybe 3 times a week, and it stays on
Yeah.
24/7. I mean, it's fine. Those things are
So
actually pretty rad.
I don't know if you saw my video from it, but on the 2nd day that I was in California, I actually crashed hard and had to be helicoptered out of the Mojave.
Missed that one.
Yeah,
Okay.
so it was on section 2 of the California BDR, which is, like, all sand.
Yeah.
The California BDR is gnarly, and
Okay.
it was a
Good to
freak
know.
accident. I hit a rock crossing a sand wash with just my foot peg, like, no other part of me hit the rock, and so it just turned my foot around, and,
Mm.
crashed the bike, and basically, I'm just sitting there going, "Well, I can't pick the bike back up because I can't stand up. I'm not getting out of here without help." And so I didn't have any cell phone reception. And I ended up having to use the inReach to basically message him and be like, I've got food, I've got water, I've got shelter if I need it. Like, if I had to, I could spend the night out here. It would suck, but I could do it. But
Yeah.
until you get somebody out here to me, I'm not getting out of here without help.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, dude, I missed that video.
Yeah, that was a pretty good
Or
one. That was a fun one.
I'll have to once when we're done here, I'll be downstairs. I'll be like,
I think the thumbnail on
"Watch
that
it."
is, "But did you die?" That's the
But did you
running joke
die?
of that's the Meerkat motto is, "But did you die?"
Oh, I love it. I love it.
So,
So you're talking about making videos, right? So at what
yeah.
time in this whole writing career was it like right from the get go? You're like, hey, dude, I'm gonna make videos and put them on the
I
tube.
had always been the photography video nerd. Like, I made deployment videos from when I was in the military. I've always done that stuff. So that's always been
Okay.
me. And then it was just kind of a natural progression of I'm doing this stuff for recreation. I want to try and do videos from it and just kind of that evolving process of being able to make good videos
Yeah,
because
that's
it's
the tough
definitely a
part right
process.
there.
It takes a while before you kind of get it figured out and have a system.
Right. Hmm.
So,
So I think a lot of people start with the at least for me, and I know a couple other guys that I've talked to has been they start videos and just kind of for them. Right? "I'm just gonna
yeah.
make these for me. I don't" and dude, when I started doing it, I knew nothing. I had a GoPro Hero 8 Black, and I went, "New battery, okay, play," or, record, and just
Record.
ran that battery out, and it was just like, "Oh my gosh." And as you learn to be like, "Oh, this is cool, record. Okay, that's dumb. We'll turn it off now."
And you get ideas from
So
other
much
people,
easier.
watching other people's videos and being like, "Oh, that's cool. I should do that." You know?
Well, that's if you watch a lot of those, how to make your videos, right? That's what they say. Dude, find somebody that does something that you like and just put your own spin on it. Which there's no original content out here anymore. Let's be real.
No,
The
but
YouTube has something like a billion uploads a day or something
oh
like
my
that.
god, yeah.
It's ridiculous. Yeah.
But you do kinda develop your own system for things. Like,
Yeah.
you figure out how like, my videos look different than somebody else's, but it's just because that's how I choose to do things. There's no right or
Exactly.
wrong answer.
Yeah. So my biggest thing that's turned is I'm still learning how to do it. I
We all
some
are.
people some people are just like they're so good videos and you watch them like if you watch a Sterling video you're like I'm terrible, you know,
Well,
or you
so
watch
Sterling Norrin is a really good funny example because his his videos that he does for the BDRs are very different than the videos that he does for his personal channel.
yeah, 100%.
And on like his writing videos sometimes can be very boring, but his BDR films are great. And it's just because it's completely different stylistic choices.
Yeah. Yep. And I think he has other people, well, maybe do this or do that. But
He
when you're
has
by
other like
yourself.
he does a lot of the editing, and then he has other people helping him film and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it's for a different purpose. So like I've done videos for other people. I've done production type videos for other organizations, and it's a completely different process than like a vlog for me.
Right, no. I, so I just did, a video last week called My Inner Monologue, and it was a very tough video for me to do. It was it talks about like, I tried to kill myself, right? So I go into my story, like, I'm
Yeah.
very into this men's mental health, and I want to help spread that word, but it was hard to get in the mindset to do a video like that. But I also wanted to do something completely different than what I've ever done, right? So I kind
Yeah.
of wanted to do the quote unquote documentary style, right? So that I kind of attempted to do that. I think it came out okay, like I could have
One of
done
the
this or
hardest
that
things with that
better,
is
but
like scripting, like pre-visualizing
yeah,
what you want it to
right.
be and then making that happen.
No, that is absolutely the most difficult thing. And I had a vision for it. And I think like I said, I think it came out okay, but it was a great learning experience because I had to take color and move it into black and white. So I had to learn the color grading and I had to do all this stuff. And just it was a completely different style of video than I've ever done. And I think it was a great learning experience, except I had to live in this bubble for like 2.5, 3 weeks of just reliving this over and over and over and over and over again, where I was
That's
just like,
so
you
the
know,
project that I've been working on this year
yeah,
is I've been riding around and interviewing a lot of the guys I served in the military with. And so that's what I'm working on editing right now. And it's the same thing. Like you're having to live in this headspace that you were in at the time, and it
right.
sucks. It makes it really hard because
Yep.
you're not just having to like relive all those worst experiences. You're having to almost put yourself in the same mindset just so that you get the emotion part of it. And it's
Dude,
super hard.
yeah. I that's exactly what happened is I found myself like kind of just being depressed,
Yeah.
reliving this. I was just like, oh God,
You
all this
think
stuff
you're
just
over it,
comes
and then
right
it's like, "Oh, crap."
right. You have because I don't think people can understand like unless you've ever been to that point, right? You can understand somebody's there, but you don't understand that feeling,
You don't
right?
understand
There's
what that
this
feels like. Yeah.
Yeah, that empty, lost, just overwhelming weight of a feeling, right? And I found myself with that feeling like for days at a time. And I thought hitting, publish and setting it to go was just going to be like, oh, okay, done, let's go. And it kind of was. What I wasn't prepared for was the next morning when the video came out that all of a sudden text message started blowing up. My DMs on Instagram were blowing up, the comments, and then people all 3, like, I'm getting text messages, DMs, and comments from the same person. I'm trying to follow a conversation. I'm like, "What is going" and all of a sudden your phone rings, and there's literally 2 separate occasions that guys called me bawling on the phone because they have a story that they haven't been able to tell,
It
you know?
resonates with so many people.
I wasn't ready for that. So at the end of the day, I just threw up an Instagram story. Dude, I was emotional, man. I was like about ready just to break down and start crying again, And I was just like, I just had to let everybody know I'm out. Phone is off. I gotta just step away from this headspace, right? And it took until let's see, the video came out Saturday, and I think Wednesday, Thursday that started toning down.
Yeah.
So it was just like, okay, I can breathe,
When I do this, when I finish I don't know, I'm not actually sure yet if the project I'm currently working on is going to go on YouTube or not. It may go somewhere else, but
Mhm.
it really will probably be one of those things of like, I've just spent the last 4 months editing this. I'm gonna take a break from
Mm.
everything for a while because you're having to live in that headspace.
Yeah, man. If you're spending that kind of that kind of time and a little bit that I know about that project, I would almost say you take that somewhere else. And if it does good over there, maybe at another time you put it on the tube,
I'm talking to a couple of our friends, mostly from the Tuck project, of trying to
Yeah.
get it potentially thrown on something bigger than just YouTube, but I have to edit it first. Like, that's the biggest thing. I have 40 plus hours of interviews that I've done over the last 7 months that I have to try and turn into something.
Dude, that's a lot of stuff to go through, you know.
Yeah.
A lot of time, just like you said, it's that headspace, you got to be there again. And that's, man, 4 months of editing in that
But
headspace.
you wanna but you
Bro.
also you feel the excitement of telling that story and the need to tell that story or those stories.
Right.
It's giving
Hmm.
voice to all of those experiences.
It really is. And I think what you're doing with that project is pretty rad. And you kind of alluded to it. And I know that this documentary hasn't came out yet, so we got to really be kind of on a little bit of careful where we're talking and stuff. But
Well,
you did
this
the Tuck
this
project.
is separate than the Tuck project.
Right, right.
Yeah,
I just like you kind of alluded to it earlier, being on the Tuck project. You have your project that you're doing right now.
yeah.
And then you also Tuck project was actually before what you're
The
doing right
Tuck
now, or
project
was
was
it
in
kind of
June.
intermixed?
The ride, yes, kinda. So,
Yeah,
I set off for my interviews and stuff, I did a couple of them, like, through Skype and stuff because there's guys in, like,
yeah.
Germany and stuff. But yeah, I've been working on my documentary since April-ish
Okay.
and did the June trip to Tuck, came back from that, did the Oregon BDR, did portions of the Idaho BDR that I had missed. And so I have videos from that are up on my channel. Like, that's the most recent videos that I've done. And that was all from July. And then since then, I've been doing my documentary project. I just got back from that earlier this week.
Oh,
And
okay.
that was going to the rest
Mm.
of the United States basically to meet up with people and interview them.
Man, I'm actually looking forward to seeing that. So when that thing drops, you gotta let me know where to go find it.
That one's gonna be yeah, I'm working on the highlight reel for it right now, and that will probably end up being on my YouTube channel just to kind of gather interest for that project. I'm not
Yeah.
sure what it's going to end up looking like at the end because it is a lot. I mean, it's 20 plus interviews, and it was 4 years of our lives, so it's hard to kind of narrow that down.
Dude, I think that's how can you? So you're gonna take like this
I'm
4
gonna try
years
though.
down to like what, an hour? You know?
It's
It's
probably gonna
yeah,
end up being 2 videos, covering different periods of time, but they'll
okay.
probably
Yeah,
both
part
be
1,
an
part 2
hour
or
and a
something.
half.
Oh,
I mean,
still though,
it's
4 years, hour and a half.
yeah.
Yeah. It's so tough, you know? So, but, let's get into the talk a little bit, right?
Yeah.
So, why don't you go ahead and just describe what the project was and, what the awareness was being raised for by doing
Well,
that?
the organization that you have the flag up for behind you, Veterans Back 40, helped sponsor it,
Yeah.
and basically what we did is we took 7 veterans to Tuktoyaktuk, Northern Territories, Canada, and back from Portland, essentially, well, Astoria.
Which
And
is on the coast.
the
Most
goal on
beautiful.
it was to film a documentary oriented around the issue of veteran and active duty suicide.
Which is an extremely important, topic because you
The
you hear the
number
numbers that are coming in all the time, and it's just I think they've dropped a little bit, but it's still
well,
was it
so here's the
40 a day?
problem. So the CDC released the estimate of 22 veterans a day several years ago,
Okay.
probably
Yeah,
10 years ago at
22 a
this
day.
point. But the issues with their methodology is that it was probably underreported in the first place because
Okay.
it's not taking into account things like intentional drug overdoses or even intentional car accidents. And so another group of people did a study more recently that actually came up with a number closer to 44 a day, just
Wow,
because of
that's a lot.
intentional
Yeah,
overdoses and things like that.
right. Things
And
that were
so,
overlooked.
yeah, well, and I mean, like, a lot of times a suicide isn't counted as a suicide, but also they aren't recording whether the person was a veteran or not. Like, it's not something that's
Okay, yeah,
recorded on the death certificate. So you just don't have the data available to make that evaluation.
yeah.
So it could be anywhere from, CDC did the numbers to somewhere around 16 a day, or it could be 40 a day. We don't know, but just from our experiences in talking, excuse me, just our experiences with like talking to veterans and stuff like that, honestly, it's probably on the higher end, not the lower end.
I would I would definitely believe that too. It's gotta be probably somewhere on the higher end.
I mean,
Um,
to give you an idea from my battalion that I served with, which was roughly
right?
350 people for 4 years, we've lost 6 people that I know of since then
And that's a high
to
percentage
suicide.
out of 350. Yeah.
It's and the sad part is there's at least 1 or 2 other people that I'm not sure if they were suicides or not. So the nu and there's probably 2 that I just don't know about. Like, there's
Yeah.
high numbers within every organization. I don't know that there's a veteran out there that doesn't know someone who's not killed themselves. Like, every veteran out there knows somebody.
Which is absolutely crazy to me,
Yeah, it's
that
100%,
that
which is
community
insane.
knows. Yeah, because I think the majority of the population, they might know somebody who did that, maybe, but they're 2, 3 removed.
Tangentially, sure,
Yeah.
but like my direct supervisor when we were in Iraq committed suicide. 2 of the guys that I
Okay.
worked with in the engineers committed suicide. Like, I know directly 3. And then I knew the other guys, I just wasn't, like, friends with them.
Man, that is I don't even know what to say to something like that, like, I can't even fathom. And one of the I actually just heard.
But that was one of the things on that trip is we were running into other veterans, even veterans from other countries, and they were all saying the same thing. Like, every one of them had their story of, "Oh, yeah, no, it's a huge issue, and I don't understand why no one seems to be talking about it."
Hopefully, the Tuck project is going to definitely start that conversation and bring a little bit more awareness to it. I would hope. I think seems like it was done the right way. And
We certainly
just
tried.
seeing, well, yeah, but seeing just what little teeny views into it, like open up the window a little bit on social media that was released. Why you guys were doing that? It just seemed awesome, and it just seemed like it was being done correctly, and I don't know, I'm really looking forward to seeing it, to be honest with you, and
I
I
mean,
don't know when it's coming
it's
out,
one of
but
those things of the trip itself is just the vehicle by which the story is being told. Like, you could have
yeah,
told that story any number of ways. We just chose to do it by putting people on motorcycles and going to a really remote part of the world.
yeah.
Um, any one of us could have done that trip. Tons of people ride to Tuck or ride to Prudhoe Bay, like they do it every year.
Mhm.
That's not the point. The point of it was to deal with that issue and
Right.
bring a group of people together through adversity to allow them to open up and tell their stories. And we got some incredible stories from the guys that were involved in the trip. So yeah, I can't wait to see what happens with that.
You know, I don't know what the trip was like, right? Obviously, I wasn't there, but I can only imagine, like, the riding would be, like, the fun part. Everybody, "Hey, hey," or just be bopping down the road, whatever, but I would really think nighttime, campfire story time, that's when the real magic would happen. I
Well, and
use that in a bad term, but,
we were also on intercoms with each other the whole time. So I mean, there was times where the whole group would just pull up tight and we'd have a whole conversation in the helmets.
right, yeah,
Because
yeah.
it's 6,000 miles. Like, you've got to just have conversations. You can't sit there and listen to, Spotify the whole time. Like, there
Yeah,
was definitely
right.
those times too, but there was a lot of the times where we were just sitting on intercoms with each other, telling stories or talking about experiences and talking about that stuff, and that was great.
Yeah, sometimes those intercoms, like I say,
Cardo,
joking
baby.
around. Yeah,
Cardo
like
did great.
yeah, the mesh, except you can't go more than like 5 feet from somebody and turn a corner and you're gone. But it's kind of funny with my dad again. So we go riding, and he is a total like Oregon Trail kind of Oregon history kind of nerd,
Oh, nice,
lack of
yeah.
a better term, right? So we're just flying down roads, and we'll be at gravel. We'll be no in the middle of nowhere, and he'll be like, "You see this right over here? Well, that was blah 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 blah." And you're like, "Where did this come from?" you know, or "Oh, if we turn down this and we hike down 4 miles and we turn left at the 30th tree, there's a pioneer woman's grave."
Oh, but some of, like,
Okay,
just running across some of that stuff is the greatest part about adventure
right.
travel. When I
Oh,
was,
100%.
like,
Yeah,
following the CDT and you cross, the Lewis and Clark areas, and it's just like, holy crap, they were coming across here, on horseback and, like,
right.
with
Yeah,
canoes and stuff, like, holy crap.
I know it's kind of wild being over here in Oregon. We have the Barlow Trail, Sam Barlow Trail. We have the Oregon Trail. Most of the Oregon Trail is private property now. But there are
Yeah, that
sections
makes
you can
sense.
actually ride. Some of it's turned into roads or whatever, and there's actually a military bombing range, old bombing range out in Boardman, and you could see the 2 tracks on Google, to go right through it. And so
Yeah.
it's pretty cool, but it's one of those things. My dad was like, "Oh, you see, blah, blah, blah.
Well,
That's where they came down."
a big part of the Nevada BDR goes up the Pony Express Trail.
That's cool,
So you're able
you
to
know?
literally just ride up the Pony Express Trail,
Yeah.
and it's crazy.
It's pretty funny. The town of Mitchell is like in Oregon. It's a little Pony Express stop where guys would switch horses and take off again, and it's just kind of wild sitting there because some of the buildings there are, I think, the OG buildings that are still there that they're being used as the grocery store or whatever. I was
Oh,
just like,
yeah.
it's cool, and then doing the same thing. Like I haven't experienced being down there and riding those parts of the trails yet, but it's kind of like you said, it's the cool part of ADV riding. Just getting out and you're like, "Oh, dude, I'm here." They saw that same mountain, or
Yeah, you
whatever.
don't have a choice but to just live in that experience because especially when you're
Right.
riding solo, there's nobody else to share it with. You're just out there.
Right. And for me, there's been a couple times where I'm like, I don't have phone service, so I got to put something down in my notes about a sign or a mountain or something, and I got to go home and like, oh, I'm back in service land
Look
and
it up,
Google it and be
yeah.
like, what the heck was that? The
I'll
sign meant what?
When
Yeah.
I'm riding off-road, I'm typically filming continuously just 'cause I'll miss stuff, and, yeah, I'll leave myself reminders on my head cam of, like, I need to look up what
I
this
do that.
was.
I do that too. Like I'll stop. And then, like, the next clip, I'll be like, "Hey, dude, so remember to go back in the last clip, probably like 2 minutes into it, and this happened."
Yep,
Because sometimes, when you're editing, you're like, that's not that cool." And then you go to the next one, like, "Oh, yeah, I gotta go back there and get that."
yep.
Oh, yeah. That is kind of funny stuff. So, the Tuck Project, when you guys left, I guess one of the cooler things that was really, I don't know, viral or whatever, but it was everywhere. Seeing you guys leaving, right? And here's the Astoria Bridge with a bunch of motorcycles and a freaking helicopter taking you out of town. So
So we had
that
3
was
guys who were Coast Guard veterans on that trip,
right.
and
Okay.
we had one guy who was working out of the Astoria Coast Guard station, and then one
That
guy
was
whose wife was
Carl.
working out of the Coast Guard station.
Okay.
And so we had gotten permission from the Coast Guard to film. We had done all that stuff in advance. And then we had talked to them about whether or not we would maybe be able to get like a flyover or something like that. And they basically just were able to set it up to where their training schedule aligned with when we were leaving. And so when they were out on their training flight, they just shadowed us out over the bridge and got that. And
That
yeah, that
was
was freaking cool.
cool.
What
I
was
can see
so
your
I was in the
smile. You're
back of
all
the group.
dread.
Um, I was one of the last riders on the left side of the group, and the helicopter was so close I couldn't see it.
Oh,
Because
no
I
kidding.
couldn't turn my head to see it. I couldn't even see him in my mirrors, but he was so close that his downdraft was buffeting us. And so I know I had my head cam running, but on our intercoms, I'm having to talk to the guy next to me of like, hey, like give me some space because he might push me into you, and I really don't want to have a
Oh my
wreck.
gosh. Can we stagger a little bit more?
We were as much
Dude,
as we
that
could, but
is
we needed to
crazy.
be tight for the filming part of it.
Right. Yeah.
And, it was what was probably the funniest part of that for me was because I could see all the cars in the other lane going the other direction, and there was just a whole lot of, like there was posts on, like, Facebook of stuff in the local, like, Astoria Facebook group of, like, "Was the president in town? What the hell was going on?" Like, what was like, all this
Oh,
stuff of,
really?
like, "What the hell was happening? Why was a helicopter following 6 motorcyclists on the bridge?" Well,
It's probably
and
drug runners.
the local police station, the police departments and the fire departments for there's like 3 communities right there that we ended up going through, all provided an escort. Um,
Nice.
I don't even know how that came about because we weren't initially, like, really asking for any of that, and then all of
Uh-huh.
a sudden, they just, like, kinda piled on of like, "Oh, yeah, we'll take you," and so they literally ran us, like, lights and everything the whole way out to the bridge. I was
Oh,
like,
no
"What the
kidding.
hell is going on?"
It's like, yeah, we don't need to stop at those stoplights. We'll just keep
Pretty
going.
much. But it was also the fact of, like, somebody got in contact with them, and it was kinda one of those things of, like, this is what the project is about, and
Right.
most fire departments and police stations are veteran heavy, and so they were all like, "Oh, absolutely, like, we'll chime in on this too, let's do it."
Yeah, that I was actually gonna bring that up 'cause, was gonna say, once they figure out what the project was about, everybody's in at that point. Let's go.
And that was universal, like, that was
Yeah.
from Astoria to Tuck and back. As soon as anybody found out what we were doing and why, they were on board.
Oh, no
Like, the
doubt about
level of
that.
support that we got was unbelievable.
Right. So you guys got out. Was there any other of those kind of escorts along the way? I don't even know if we could talk
Not
about that, but
no, not for that stuff. That was just kind of unique because we had the Coast Guard guys with us.
yeah.
Um, people knew who we were before we showed up.
So
Like
there was definitely a buzz.
there was awareness, yeah, like
Yeah.
pulling into Dawson City, people already knew who we were. "Oh, you're the veterans group," like, all that stuff. Um,
Okay.
and I mean, with adventure motorcycling anyway, you run into people at rest stops or campgrounds
Yeah.
or whatever and kind of share stories and stuff. So we were running into the same people the entire way. And because, well, I mean, hell, there's only 2 roads that go up there. So you see the same
Right.
people.
Kind of just leapfrogging each other. Yeah.
Well, once you get to Dawson City to Tuck, there's 1 road. So
Right.
everyone you see, you're gonna see them at least probably twice going up and coming back.
It's kind of cool though.
Oh,
Absolutely.
yeah. There was a couple from Brazil that we talked to a bunch. There was, there was a couple of people along the way that we kinda helped because we had a support vehicle with a trailer, and so we had more tools than most people had. We were in Innovic, and we helped a guy change a flat because he had blown all of his spare tubes and, stuff like that, so
I heard you guys had a couple blown tires along the way.
we had more trouble with our support vehicle than we did with the bikes.
Well, that's right. Yeah, yeah.
So,
I remember hearing
we
that.
had 2 flat tires on bikes. We had we ended up replacing all 4 tires on the trailer.
Oh my
Um,
lord.
yeah, like, the Dempster Highway is rough. It's not difficult riding at all, it's just a gravel road, but the rocks are sharp. I think one of the flats on the trailer and one of the flats on the truck were literally just rocks going through the tread. It wasn't even hitting like a nail or anything like that. It was a rock.
Yeah.
And I think our
Yeah, that's
flat on the
fun.
bike rear tire was a rock that just went through the tread.
Oh, man. That
So,
is some
and then
brutal rock
we
for
had
sure.
3 bikes with blown fork seals after we got back down the Dempster.
Mine currently has a blown fork seal right now.
Well, so it's that calcium chloride stuff they put on the road to keep the dust
Oh yeah,
down.
that's brutal.
It turns
Yeah,
into mud, and then when it dries, it's just concrete. And so we got down into Dawson, City again after coming back down the Dempster, and, like, all of a sudden, everybody's coming up on the intercoms of, "Oh, crap, my fork seals are leaking." And so we had a whole thing where we had to pull all the bikes over and, do a seal saver around them to try and get all the crap out from
right.
under them and clean all the bikes off, and yeah.
Man, that is some brutal stuff. And I
You
got to
if
tell
you
you
are
that
not able to be self-supporting, you should not go up the Dempster. It
100,
is you
yeah,
are
yeah.
fully on your own for 500 miles round both ways.
Dude, that is crazy. And I know that some of that stuff will get on like your radiator and just overheat because it
Oh, yeah,
doesn't
one of
allow
the guys'
anything to come
bikes
in.
overheated coming back into, Eagle Plains.
Um, I think I think I heard a story about that. I don't know if we should talk about it, but I think I heard like something had to do with limited water in the town.
Well, so Eagle Plains, they have to truck the water in.
Right. That's what I heard.
Like, there's
Yep.
nothing. The Eagle Plains is essentially 3 buildings. Um And yeah, so we got into Eagle Plains and one of the guy's bikes was fully overheating because the radiator had gotten covered in mud. And he pulled into like the maintenance shop and was basically just like, please help. I just need to wash the radiator off, like, or my bike is going to lock up. And they did let him spray the bike off and wash it, but you can't wash the bikes. Like, you can't wash the vehicles because they have to ship all that water in. So they were
Yeah,
just
that's
nice and
crazy.
allowed him to do that,
Yeah.
but we had to wait until we got down to Dawson Creek or Dawson City before we were able to actually clean everything off.
Hey, that is can you imagine living in a community like that? Like everything's
I don't
your
know that
water
any
has to come in.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, like Eagle Plains, I'm not sure that anybody really lives there year round. It's not really a town, it's essentially a gas stop because it's
Yeah.
260 something miles from Dawson City to Eagle Plains, and it's the only gas stop along that entire distance.
It seems very conveniently located
I think they
for
had to put
cars,
it
not for
there. Yeah.
motorcycles. So,
Well,
I mean, that's a journey. I mean, 260 miles. So you guys had to have fuel with you to top off in between, right?
I 2 of us had enough gas to do it in a single run. Everybody else had to carry spare gas.
Yeah. I would imagine. So the AT-AT, I can do that. So I can preface this, right?
Oh,
So
we
the
were
AT-AT,
nursing them, like, we were being
yeah.
real gentle on them.
Oh, I was gonna say because I am brappy. I am just like brap, 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 brap.
Yeah.
I just go and gosh, there's no way. And then I got some new tires on there right now too. That it's just like my fuel economy just went,
But
full
it's
naughty. So
again that level of, like, risk calculation because
yeah,
you're willing to do that stuff under certain circumstances where, yeah, you're getting 30 miles to the gallon, but then there's other times where you realize, like, there's no one coming for me if I run out of gas, so I
right,
have to
right,
make it.
yeah, yeah. Man, I don't know. I'd have to carry at least 1 or 2 gallons
I
just
carried a
in
spare
case.
gallon just in case, but I ended up giving it to everybody else more than using it myself because I have the camel
Right.
tank on my T7.
Okay.
So if I'm
Yeah.
if I'm being nice to it, I can definitely hit 300 miles on a tank of gas.
I wonder under perfect conditions where I was riding how far I can go. I should probably check that out one of these days.
It's
Just
worth
kind of
trying it once or
go.
twice. I mean, I figured it out from Nevada because there's a section in Nevada where you have to go 220 miles with no services,
Hmm.
and so that was the first time where I ever, like, sat there and watched my gas mileage, and if I'm
Yeah.
in 6th gear going 50 on dirt, I can get 60 miles to the gallon.
Wow. Okay.
You
Just
just you know, you're
keep
just
of
being
that.
nice to it, you know?
Right. Right. Yeah.
And yeah, so
So my dad was on the T7. We were coming back Vancouver Island, which is a really weird setup up there that they have because we're used to down here in the States, like at an exit on the freeway, you have like gas stations and it has all the whatever, and you get off and it has arrows like where to go, right? And I don't
Yeah.
know if this is actually like huge Canadian thing all the way across the country or whatever, but I know on the island we were coming down the main highway and my dad was just getting low on fuel and we were kind of getting after. We had somewhere to be, so
And a
we were
stock
trying to get
P7 does not have a great amount of range.
right. So we're looking at stuff, and my dad is he's starting to get a little grumpy. Let's put it that way. Like, slow down. I'm almost out of fuel, and then of course I'm like pass an exit just goes screaming by me. And I'm like, oh yeah, I was supposed to look for fuel. And he's like, God dang it. Rah, rah, rah." So we finally get up and I'm like, okay, here's a fuel sign for this exit. Cool. And the way this road is, it's like down the middle, and there's a town that way, and there's a town that way, but it's
Oh,
still several miles off the road, right? But you see the fuel sign on the exit, and then you get off, and there's nothing. It's like,
as you
which way's the
get
fuel,
further north,
and which way's the
they were
closest?
better about having stuff that showed you, like, where the fuel was or how
Yeah,
far
I
away
was
it
gonna say, I
was,
hope so. I hope
but
so.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot
And
of
then
that's
it
just
got
the
to the
Western United States too, like, you do not pass the opportunity to get gas.
That's the golden rule, though. That is 100% the golden rule. I just fueled up, but I'm gonna fuel up again.
Yeah.
We'll just top off.
I
It's
have
okay.
definitely gone 80 miles and then gotten gas again.
Well, I think we all have. You
Yeah,
you
like, you
have
just
to.
don't risk
You
it.
Yeah, you hit that 80 miles and then might be stretching it. Let's just top off. No big deal,
Yeah.
right?
One
And then
on mine because I have the spare tank, so there's been times where I've just refilled the spare tank,
yeah.
but
So that's the
the
camel
funny thing
tank.
on the
So
P7 is the
you should
reserve is
explain the
so
camel
big
tank
on
for
that
people that
bike.
doesn't have it. So we're talking over each other.
I know,
So
sorry, there's just a little bit of
yeah,
a
no,
delay.
it is. It's all good. It is all good. Uh, Say that again, but also explain your camel tank because the one thing that I know about some of my audiences, I'm getting a lot of messages from brand new riders,
Yeah,
right? So they're like, "Oh, this is great, but what's this?" Right? And I even know a couple of them personally, so they're like, "Oh, what is this?"
yeah,
So describe the camel tank for them because I know what it is. You know what it is.
yeah.
Most people do, but describe it and then just redo
So
your
the stock
statement.
tank on a Tenere 700 is 4.2 gallons. So you get 220 miles if you're being kinda nice to it, and the Camel tank is a Canadian company run by a guy named Corey, and it's an auxiliary tank that's basically a gallon and a half. It's 5 liters extra. And he makes them for a bunch of different bikes, but the Tenere is definitely probably one of the ones that people put them on the most because it gives you essentially a 300-mile range if you're being nice to the bike. I when we were coming back down from Eagle Plains to Dawson City, I ran it the whole way without refilling just to see what I could do, and it's 265, 270 miles where there's no services, and I still had 3 bars on my fuel gauge when we pulled into Dawson City. So it's just vacuum fed, so essentially when the main tank starts to run down, it feeds into the main tank, but it gives you just that safety margin instead of having to carry, a 1 or a 2-gallon gas bag or Rotopacks.
Right.
It's plumbed
Yeah,
into the bike, and so you just fill both of them up when you fill up, and you're good to go.
yeah, absolutely. Thanks for explaining that. And you also brought up the roto packs. So the roto packs are the little fuel tanks that'll be behind your luggage or whatever.
Yeah, I
And
used those for years, and they work. They're just not the Camel tank is way handier because you don't have to worry about stopping and filling back up. It just does it.
right, I think that's pretty rad, actually. I was just again up in Canada, and there's a couple people that were talking about the roto packs that they were just leaving on their bikes essentially, and they never really used it, but they always had that weight on there, and it ended up um, One one bike ended up breaking the rack that it was attached to,
Mm.
ended up cracking that, but somebody else was it I can't remember, was it John's? I think it was John's bike, but I could be wrong, but somebody ended up cracking part of their frame, the actual motorcycle frame because of just the weight constantly just shaking and vibrating, and it was just always
It's
on there full.
it's liquid, like, it's heavy. You know, a
Yeah.
gallon of gas it's lighter than water, but it's still 7 pounds or something per gallon, like, it's
Yeah, I think
heavy.
it's 7.8, I believe. Something like
Water's
that.
8 gallon water's basically 8 pounds per gallon, gas is a little lighter just because it's not as
Yeah,
dense. But,
right.
yeah,
Still
it's
having
weight.
that around all the time. Yeah, I know. That's crazy, man. So, I think inquiring minds wanna know, you guys made it up to the Arctic Ocean, and I did see some pictures of you crazy guys swimming in the Arctic Ocean.
It was not pleasant. I don't know that I'm on any of the footage of us swimming because I was not in the water for very long.
Yeah,
I
I can
pretty much got
imagine
my
it's a
feet
little
in and I
chilly.
was just like, "Nope, I'm good," because I was already cold. It was like 55 that day, and so I had a bunch of my extra clothes on and stuff, but I got up there and I'm just like, "No, I'm already cold, dude. I'm not doing this." And there's no
One of
beach.
those
It's
things.
all just, like, rocky and stuff,
Right,
so
that's
trying to get into the water was sketchy. All the locals were laughing at us and stuff. Yeah,
oh,
it
I'm
was
sure
funny.
they're like, "Oh, here's some more guys." I
Well,
can't remember
so
who it was.
Tuktoyaktuk
Wasn't
is
there like a
interesting because there hasn't been tourism in Tuktoyaktuk. Like, they didn't finish the road until 2017. So, the
I didn't
town
know
is not accustomed to really having tourism yet. It's still kind of a new thing for them. And they're kind of still getting used to it. So it's kind of fun for them. Like everybody was so nice. It was wonderful up there. But they're all still kind of getting used to like, oh, there's a bunch of people from like all over the world riding their bikes up here. What the hell is going on?
right? They don't understand the thrill of that or the calling for some of us to be, "I wanna go up there,"
Yeah,
you know?
they're getting there. You know, they're starting to have more tourist stuff there, like amenities and things. Everybody was so nice.
Yeah. I saw somebody was it like a pink dinosaur thing that was like a floaty floating around in there? Somebody had
We had a
some
couple of
floaty thing.
floaties, and then we also had one of those inflatable, like, Halloween costumes of a pink unicorn. That made an
I did
appearance
see
a
it
couple of
some
times. I don't know that
campsite
made an
thing.
appearance up at the Arctic Ocean, but yeah, we had a few
Yeah,
pool floaties.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I saw that, I was just like, "Okay, that's funny." That is funny. So, what was it like when you got up there? I mean, that's only half the journey, right? So you gotta turn and burn, and you guys gotta come back to
And I was
Astoria, but
constantly reminding people of, like, "Guys, we are halfway."
right,
That's the rule in mountaineering, that's the rule in so many things of, like, when you
yeah,
arrive at the destination, you are halfway.
right.
Because we still had another 2,700 miles or whatever to get back to Portland. And so it's hard to describe, like the Arctic is kind of hard to describe. It's very surreal because there's nothing that looks like that. You know, I've traveled a
Mm.
lot. There is nothing that looks like north of the Arctic Circle other than that. Um It's all, you know, you cross the Canadian Rockies as you're kind of going up through the Arctic Circle, and then you get out onto essentially the tundra. And so it's not particularly hilly, it's very flat, and it's just these stunted trees called Krumholtz trees because the weather and the environment is so gnarly, they can't get any bigger. And so it's a
Right.
whole bunch of, 8-foot tall Christmas trees and swampland essentially because we were there right around the summer solstice, so the sun's up 24/7 and the snow's all melted. So it's just this swamp kind of, ground that is a perfect mosquito breeding ground. That's why the mosquitoes get so bad up
Yeah.
there is because they can live, they breed just all in that swamp stuff. And it's just that for 300 miles.
You're like,
Until you
"Yeah,
get, you
no."
get into Inuvik and then you get into Tuktoyaktuk, and, there was a couple of times we got the drone up high enough where you felt like you could see the curvature of the earth.
Oh, no kidding.
It's just
That's
because
kinda
it's just
wild.
there's no terrain features for a couple
Wait,
100 miles.
you mean the Earth's not flat?
Oh god.
Come on
Man,
now.
I've gotten into that with a couple of people on internet stuff. It was just like, you can't be that dumb. Like,
So
the fact that
we're
that
taking this,
still
right?
has a like, it's totally tangential, but the
Yeah,
fact that
yeah.
that's having a comeback is so irritating.
We're taking this off ramp for a minute. So I kind of find it entertaining, right?
Oh, I love messing with
So
them.
oh, I don't mess with them, but what I do is I'm swiping through Instagram, for example, right? So you're swiping, 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 and then all of a sudden that'll come up, and I'm like, okay, I want to watch this, right? So you go off
Or
and
even
you
just
watch it. These
videos from, like, the ISS or something, and, like, the first 15 comments are all idiots, like, "Great green screen," and, like,
right,
"Blah,
yeah, yeah.
blah." Like, bro, you can see it with a pair of binoculars. What is fucking wrong with you?
I know. So I go through these pages, and then I like all of a sudden now my feed, all the suggestions are now all flat Earth stuff, and I'm like,
It
oh
triggered the
man,
algorithm, and you're just,
it
like,
does.
stuck
And
in a
then it's like
rabbit
it takes
hole.
me a week to get away from it. I'm like, oh my god, back to puppies or something. It takes me
Yep.
forever to get back to it. But when it's on there, it is just it's gold. The comment sections is where it's at. You just got to find a post where you're like, what? And then just
It's
start hitting the comments. It's
it's
amazing.
entertaining, but it's also irritating of just, like, the fact that people can be that dumb in this day and age.
What? This is a whole
You
nother
hold all of
conversation.
human knowledge is available to your fingertips,
I
and
know.
that's what you believe.
There's more computer that computer is more efficient and does like so much more than when we went in the Apollo missions and we had rooms and rooms
I
and rooms full of computers, right?
I
How like crazy
visited
is that?
the Air and Space Museum in DC, and they have one of the original computers set up against one of the walls, and so it takes up, like, the whole
Gosh.
corner of this room.
Yeah.
And they have a placard up that has all the information on, like, how much memory it had and all this stuff, and I took a picture of it, and then I did the math later on, and so when I shared it online, I'm like, the phone that took this picture had, like, 16,500 times the computing power of the computer that it's taking the picture of.
Oh my god, dude.
It
How
was it was
crazy is that?
mind-blowing.
Oh my gosh. That is just astronomical how far technology has come. I mean, we're living in like this. I mean,
And
think
it ain't
about when we
slowing
were
down.
kids, right? No, no. It's taken off. But think about where we were when we were kids. I'm 48. How old are you? I don't even know.
39. Like, I was in 4th or 5th grade when I sent, because I was at a technology school, so I sent, like, an email through intranet in,
Right. Yeah.
like, in early 90s sometime, and that was, like, a huge deal.
Yeah. Right. Well, you got to thank ham operators like myself, guys, of it, OKJ. I had nothing to do with this, but a lot of the digital platforms and everything that we know about actually come from ham operators trying to push things. Like they were sending
On DARPA.
email. Yeah, I mean they were sending email in like the 60s. Like they
Yeah.
figured out how to send things and packets and things like that. But
Excuse me,
it's
sorry.
it's wild where technology is coming. I mean, the phones. I mean, I remember when I was a kid. I mean, you have to
The
the
fact that we
rotary
still call
phone,
this a phone is stupid.
right? I
It's
know,
not.
right? It's the pocket computer. It's
Yeah.
pretty rad though. And then it's the Android versus the people that make mistakes with the Apple phones. Android.
Whatever.
They're
Yeah.
what half my
What
viewers. Bye.
I'm an Android guy too, like, whatever.
Yeah, I don't know. I saw you had the quad lock case on there too. That's a
I've gone
necessity, I
back and
think.
forth with a couple of different ones. I used RAM for a little while. I used SP Connect, which is another, it's kind of it's similar to the RAM,
Okay.
or to the quad lock. You just turn it and
Okay.
click it in. But yeah, I started using the quad locks at least 2 years ago and
Yeah, same.
haven't ever looked at anything since. It's the only thing I've had where I haven't dropped a phone off the bike.
Yeah.
And I
Uh
fall over all the time. So, it's nice
yeah.
to crash test things every once in a while.
I know. I do that with my Garmin. Sometimes I don't put it in the cradle enough and I just like, what hit my leg? Oh, there's my Garmin bouncing down the road.
Oh,
Gotta turn
crap,
around and go
yeah.
get it.
I
Yeah.
have the tablet mounted to mine, and thankfully it locks in there really well, so I've never launched that
Yeah.
off the bike because that would be really
Yeah.
bad.
I know. I actually have the locking thing for it, but I think it's a tour tech that locks it in, but I've never mounted it
Oh,
yet.
okay, yeah.
But I think the quad lock was probably one of the best upgrades I think I did because I had that RAM too. And
It
there was
just
like
works.
sometimes you had
Like,
sometimes you had to put
it's
that little rubber band over the top so it doesn't go launching, but it's just I just like the click and then I like the charging point, or the charger point. Port.
I
Holy moly,
so
can't even
my
talk.
I had a wireless one on mine forever, and actually
Yeah.
on the tuck trip, it died.
Okay.
But, I mean, so I had it for 3 years, and it worked fine just on
Yeah.
the wireless charging in every condition imaginable, and then I finally
Right.
killed it.
Yeah, I
So,
just click and I'm sure you do the same thing. Like I'm always so I got, my Garmin on this side and then over here I've got Gaia running, which I love. I think Gaia is better than most anything out there. So I'm using that 90% of the time. The Garmin is
so
just
the
like
one that I will suggest
there
you
we go.
check out is called Drive Mode Dashboard 2.
Okay.
It's so do you know the AJP PR7?
No.
Okay, it's like a rally bike kinda thing, but it comes with a tablet as the dash,
Oh yeah,
and
yeah,
it
yeah, yeah. Okay. I
it
know
runs
I
that
didn't know
it runs
the
that
name
app
of it.
for its dash,
Okay.
and
Okay.
you can
That's
just
cool.
download the app. They have a beta for it now for a better version of it, and that's what I've been running, but at least especially for off-road, it's the best I've ever found. 'Cause you're
Really?
able to just upload, like, a GPX, and it shows you the GPX, and you can follow it on the tablet. And so I've been
That's
using
pretty
Drive
sweet.
Mode Dashboard since 2019,
Okay.
and it just fricking works. Like,
I'm gonna have to definitely check that out because
you can use Bluetooth controllers on your handlebars to run the app, so you don't even have to take your hands off the handlebars. You can run it like a
cool.
rally computer. A
Yeah.
lot of the, like, rally races, they've used it to run the rally map. Um, I've used it as my dash and then also just for all of my off-road stuff for years. It just works. The developer is super involved in the ADV community and like putting features on it as people request things and all that. So like any of my videos getting off-road, that's what I'm using.
I think that's pretty rad, actually. We'll have to make sure I get that from
Yeah.
you because I'll probably forget when we get done here. I have to go back through
The
and find this
nicest thing about the
conversation, but
tablet is just having the increased size of the screen because I have a 7-inch tablet on my dash of
dang,
being able to see like the different roads that aren't on your route because you
right.
pull up to a 5-way intersection, it's like where the hell am I going?
Left, always left. That's my
Ooh,
rule of thumb.
you are slowing down bad.
Oh, yeah, you kind of were starting to drag there a second ago too,
Yeah,
but that's all right. Part of doing remote broadcasts like this.
nature of the beast.
Yeah, it's all good, man. Yeah, Guy is kind of the same way. You can see all the different routes, but as of right now, I haven't used that, but as of right now, Gaia is for me the best one. The different layers that I have on it right now, I could see private property, I could see
I've ridden with
gates,
people using
generally
Gaia
speaking.
and it definitely works. One of the biggest differences is I can have it do direction of travel is up and it will follow me.
Same.
'Cause I
Yeah.
know a lot of times on some of the Gaia stuff, you have to, like, hand move it to keep your route in place and
No, I don't know if that maybe I buy it. I don't know if that is not part of the premium
maybe.
package, but I hit the button to center me and I hit it again and it flips everything. So I'm going up and
Yeah.
it tracks right where I go. And I can zoom in and zoom out depending on how much I want to see. My dad will be like so far out. He's like, "We got a turn coming up." And I'm like, "I don't see it." And you zoom in, you're like, "It's like 10 miles still."
Yeah.
You know?
I definitely have to play with that on mine sometimes of, like,
Yeah.
how close do I need to see stuff versus where do I need to see my next turn?
Yeah.
But,
I
yeah.
I I generally keep it to where when the turn comes into the screen, I'm kind of like, it's not far. I don't know
Well, and
how
that's
far,
the
but it's
advantage
not
with
far.
the hand controller on mine is I can zoom in and zoom out from my handlebars. And so, like, as it comes closer to me, I can zoom closer in to get a better
That's
field of
rad.
view. Yeah, it's super
That is
handy.
rad. Sometimes, as everybody knows, when you're too far out, there could
You're, like,
be
looking
that
for
little
your
hidden
turn, and
road
you
right
realize
here.
it's, like, 3
Yeah,
miles away.
yeah. You could be this little road that you don't see, and you're like, "Oh, here I am," and you get down, and you're like, "Ah, it's just
And that's one of the other
road."
nice things is you can download all the maps. So, like, I have all of
Yeah,
North America downloaded to the tablet, and it includes a lot of those little trails and stuff. So,
that's
especially,
rad.
like, the Oregon BDR, there's a couple of those trails, you are just in the middle of nowhere, and there's a million of little cow paths and stuff going off in every possible direction. And a lot of the, until you zoom way in on yourself, you can't tell which one's the right one. And
Right.
so I only ended up off trail on the Oregon BDR once, um, which was actually the same one. Were you with Ben when he, because they got lost
No.
right in that same area? But it's literally just
Well,
I
is
followed
that
a cow. I followed a cow path down the hill. It's like, oh, I guess
isn't
I'm going
that
this way.
wasn't that right by Heart Mountain or something?
Y-
I think
Um,
going into the
it
gate.
was
I
right.
remember
Yeah, it was
watching the
right near the
video on
Baby
that. Yeah.
Butte diversion.
Yeah. We'll
But it's one of those ones where literally just the trail looks like you should keep going straight, and you actually need to make like a hard right.
okay.
But
Fair
yeah,
enough. Yeah. We just did that. Sean and I and oh my gosh, I'm forgetting this guy's name. But we just went on this ride in the North Vancouver Island, and we got to the point to where one of the tracks was easy and one of the tracks was not. So the more advanced riders, we were kind of like, hey, we're going to go this way and check it out. And then we had some other riders who weren't as experienced, or whatever. And they were kind of like, you guys go down this way. And then they met, right? So they
yeah.
kind of just veered off and then they came back and they met. So guys are following me and I'm like, okay, here we go. And we're kind of getting after it, right? So I got two dudes behind me, both on 1250 GSAs.
Oh,
Okay. So
geez,
big bikes, right? So we're
super
flying.
tankers.
Oh yeah. And we're just going, and all of a sudden, man, the road just kind of veers to the left and then just goes. "Thunk." And we were talking about this. Like we're like 30% grade was average. And I think there was probably areas, 10, 20, 30-foot sections that were probably 40, 45% gradients going up. Steep stuff. And we're just like, man, I'm like, I hope these guys are not following me because I know I am throwing all sorts of big rocks because it was
Because you have to
big,
stay on it,
chunky
or you're
base.
gonna lose your
Yeah.
momentum.
Oh man, it was just like baseball sized rocks. And we're just like, we're just going and we're going up. And I'm just like, I want to look at the view. This is amazing, but holy crap. Okay. And it's like you're eating handlebars, right? You're just
Yeah.
super steep. And all of a sudden I turn this corner and there's like a tank trap in this dugout and Jersey barriers. I'm like, what the world? And then these guys pull up behind me, and Sean, ADV Oregon, he goes, I was just thinking, I hope I don't have to ride down this. And we were like, guess what? We got to ride down it.
Congratulations. I
Yeah. So
will say
we
at least
turn,
going
burn.
down that stuff is typically easier.
See, they were just the opposite. I
I've
think
heard I think it
same, but
depends. So, like, I come from kind of a mountain biking background, and so for me, I view going downhill as easier than going uphill just because your momentum is guaranteed.
right.
Like,
So,
you're just using the brakes and the engine to slow yourself down. You can allow the bike to roll through all the really tough obstacles. Going uphill, if you don't stay on the gas and maintain your momentum, you're screwed.
and some of the bikes, like my bike, I don't know what the deal is. I've talked to my mechanic about this, and we're kind of like, he has some theories or whatever, but I call it the belch, right? So sometimes when I get going at something really steep and I'm on it, it will kind of be like, wah, wah, it kind of has this little belch moment where I'm okay, there I go. And I kind of lose that momentum. And it could screw you if it just died. But
Well, you have
man,
traction control on yours, correct?
I do, but in those scenarios, I got everything off. I'm
Oh,
going,
okay.
I call it
Because
full
that's the
hooligan
nicest
mood.
thing about the T7 is I don't have any of the electronics.
I
It's a
know.
cable throttle. But I
I'm
think some
like,
of that's also the torque band on the motor.
Yeah.
because that's one of the things that I like about the T7 that I didn't like about the 690 is that if you weren't kind of high up in the rev range on the 690, it would bog down. It wants you to wring its neck. The T7
Yeah.
will tractor through anything.
Oh, yeah. The torque on those bikes are just amazing.
If
It's
you
like
if you can get it up above 2,500 RPM, it will go.
right, right. I think, yeah, that's that way too, and, especially going downhill, I got the engine brake, and I don't think the T7 actually has that, so I can actually feel going downhill. I'll
It
feel
doesn't
the engine
engine
brake
brake as
engage.
much, but it's also a lighter bike, so you just kinda get going.
Right. I don't know. It was quite the adventure. But that goes back to the
Screen you
track,
went
right?
freeze frame for me for a minute there.
Yeah. Yeah, you were frozen too, so we're just gonna talk because the audio is coming through fine. So, that goes with the tracks, right? So, when we
I
got
didn't
up
get
there and
any of
we
that.
oh, man, maybe we're back. So, what I was saying is, can you hear me now? You're kinda moving
You
forward
went
here.
full robot. There you go.
Yep.
I had
Hey,
none of
we're
that.
back. Okay. So, anyways, that's one of the things I don't like about the remote stuff. But to get good guests on, they're going to be from all over. So, um, one of the things that we were talking about were the tracks, following the tracks. And when we got up to that tank trap up that super steep hill, I looked and I'm like, oh, we're way off track. Like we're not even here anymore. So I saw where we missed the turn. So we went back down to that. And it was completely overgrown, more tank traps. Like unless you're looking for it, you wouldn't have seen that that was actually a road.
Yeah.
So, luckily, again, we had Zolio, so we communicated with the other group like, "Hey, we ran into something. We're turning around. We're coming back the way you guys did." Like, cool. So they waited, on the meeting spot. And again, man, we were full rally mode trying to catch up with those guys. It was awesome. But when we got up there, the other side, they walked over to where we would have been coming up, and it was like a washout with a 30-foot ravine. So even if we would
Yeah.
have made it over, we would have been like, "Okay, we'll be right back."
That's the
Crazy
tablets
stuff.
saved me a couple of times on being able to route find around things, like, not just
Yeah.
showing my expected route, but showing all of the other available roads.
Yeah, that's super crucial. Do you typically take paper maps too, or are you just all
It
digital?
depends. I for all of the BDRs, I had the BDR maps just
Yeah,
because there was things that they had more details about that were super handy, because the Butler maps are great. But for most of my other stuff, not typically, just because I would have to carry so many friggin' maps.
no, I totally get that. I think for like a specific adventure, right? I think they're very important. And then it goes back to when I was a kid. My uncle has a boat out on the Puget Sound, and he had this beautiful GPS sitting up there, right? And we're cruising, and I'm watching the track and everything. But he's old school, so he's got the map laid down. He's got his compass out, and he's doing everything, and he's finding exactly where we are, and he's making his notes or whatever. And I just looked at him and said, "Hey, Uncle Don, why do you have the paper map when you have this GPS?" And he just looked at me. He goes, "Well, what if the power goes out? I need to know exactly where I'm at." And that little comment, that little conversation, man, I'm just like, paper map. Need to
It
have one
took a
close
while
by,
for the technology to evolve to the point where you could depend on it. On my 690, I had 2 GPSs because I had my tablet set up, and then I had a backup just like Garmin Montana, um, for the longest time, just because I wasn't sure if the technology had evolved yet to where it was reliable. But, I mean, like I said, I've been using that since 2019. I've never had it fail on me. So, I'm able to trust it enough as my primary, mode of transportation. I always have I mean, hell, I could navigate with my inReach because I could have it give me
Right.
my, back to origin and have it backtrack. Like I have anytime I'm on the bike, I have basically 3 methods of potential navigation other than a paper map.
That's
So,
that's important. That's
yeah.
a good comment too, that, it took some time for the technology to actually catch up. Like the technology from when I was a kid to now is obviously night and day, not even the same
Yeah.
thing, right? So, but I
It's at
still
the point now where you could very easily reliably navigate without a dedicated GPS and just use a phone or a tablet or whatever as your navigation system. Like that, it works now.
yeah. Well, unless you're a flat earther and think there's gonna be a massive EMP on top of everything else, so
Well, no, what they call it the ground positioning system or something because they don't believe in satellites.
yeah,
Yeah.
I know. Dude, okay, so that whole thing is kinda funny because, there's a picture floating around from, again, Critters Camp Out, and this girl, Summer Hurst, were sitting around the fire, and I think it was actually the day before the actual event started, and she just got up and she took this picture, and she looks down at her phone, she's like, "What in the hell is that?" And then she looks up and she goes like, "What is that? Look." So we all look up. It was Starlink coming over.
Oh, yeah.
They just did a launch. There's 21 of them in a perfect line, just going
That's
right over
freaky
us.
looking the first time you see that.
It was so cool. And then the second night, the night after that rather, they came back by again, but it was very sporadic because now they're trying to disperse. So you
Yeah,
had
they're all
one,
spreading out into their orbits.
yeah, and then you had two kind of going in different directions, but they are all still kind of together. But I thought it was super cool. It's the second time that I've seen Starlink,
I just
so
wonder, like, how
just
bad
saying.
does that break the brains of remote tribes and stuff like that?
Well, could you imagine? What in the world? Oh my gosh.
I mean, we
That
already had
is
enough with, like, the airplane thing with remote
right.
tribes. I can't remember the term for it, but, you know, people would drop stuff out of airplanes, and it would almost become like a religious thing for some of the tribes. Well, now you have satellites.
Right. That's just the technology again, technology. It's just amazing.
Yeah.
But I also know that a lot of these amateur stargazer guys and stuff, they're starting to get a little pissy with the Starlink because they're cluttering the skies so much and they're just ruining
Well,
the trajectory of their
you're trying to
stuff.
do a long time lapse or something, you end up with a big light streak through the middle of it,
Right.
but
Right.
some of that's also just you have to time it differently because the only time you get those is shortly after sundown or shortly before sunrise, so if you're doing them in full night, you don't get that
I think
because it's
it's
still reflecting the
yeah.
sun,
Right. Right.
but
I don't
yeah.
know, man. This stuff is pretty damn cool. And then there again, Starlink pretty soon is gonna mean we're gonna be out in the absolute middle of nowhere scrolling
And have
Instagram.
full internet.
You know, like,
Yeah.
what am I doing out here? Yeah. I think that's
Well,
pretty
coming
rad,
up,
man.
we have the annular eclipse coming up, and I have a camera that I'm gonna take video of the eclipse.
Oh, is that what is it? The Ring of Fire or something that's coming up this weekend?
It's called an annular eclipse because the moon isn't going
Yeah.
to fully cover the sun, so you still get a view of it. But
Right.
yeah, it should be cool
So
looking.
so this is October 10th that we're doing this on, and
The
my
eclipse is the
son Braden.
14th, I feel like.
Yeah, it's the 14th.
Yeah,
It's on Saturday. So my son is
yeah.
actually getting married that day. So we're gonna be down in the southern Oregon coast where he's getting hitched, out on this big bluff and whatever. So I thought it'd be kind of cool, but I don't think we're right on that border. I think we're gonna be a little too far south to actually see it, but I think we're gonna be on the cuff of actually maybe seeing a little bit of it, but
I'm in the
also we could,
80% portion, so I'm not going to get the
yeah,
full effect, but I'm going to get 80% of it. I think yeah, you're a little too far north.
yeah. Well, I think we're too far south. I think if we were around Central Oregon, around like Antelope, I think
I'd have to look at the
somewhere in there,
map to
it's supposed
see
to be
where it's going
100, but
through.
yeah. But again, it's Oregon in October, so nobody's gonna see it because it's gonna be crappy outside.
I'm
I'm
really
just
hoping the
saying.
weather is good on Saturday or I'm gonna be pissed.
Yeah, I know. I keep watching that weather report. I'm just like, yeah, this sucks. Oh well, whatever. Got to go climb Mount Hood or something, get above it. But
It'll probably be a cool effect for their wedding photos.
yeah, if we could see it, he told me he's like, yeah, I'm gonna get married in October on the Oregon coast. I'm like, what the hell are you doing, kid? Like, okay,
Whatever.
He's like, it's down in Southern Oregon. It's gonna be great weather. I'm like. Mm,
Have
I'm
you
gonna take
lived
his word
here?
for it, but, it's Oregon. Just
Yeah.
saying. We'll see how that all goes out, right? So, well, what else you got coming up, man? So we've kind of covered your motorcycle riding stuff. We've covered, you decided to get airlifted out once. Um, the duck project, your project. You got anything else rad kind of coming up or something?
The
Yeah.
big one is my documentary stuff. I mean, it's kind of the same thing as like with yours. If it's going to be a completely different thing for me than what I've done previously. You know, and it's not none of it's oriented around motorcycles. It doesn't have anything to do with adventure travel. It's all about a documentary of our time in the military. And so it's going to look completely different than anything that I've worked on before. But that's also what kind of makes it exciting because I don't know what that's going to end up looking like or how that's going to go. So that's basically going to be my life for the next 4 months of trying to get through all that footage because it's a ton. I mean, you know how it is. Like you go out and shoot something and it takes 4 times as long to turn it into something as it does to
Yeah.
shoot it.
Oh, for sure. The creativity aspect, and how many times you get into something and you're like, oh, I should do this different. Redo.
Yeah, I'm better now about turning my mental image into what I'm actually seeing on the screen. But yeah,
Yeah.
it takes time.
Yeah, for me right now, where I'm at with my editing skills is my mind is like years ahead of my capabilities. I'm like,
Well,
how do I do this?
yeah. So your inner voice video, how long did it take you to edit that?
The editing process, to actually put it together didn't take me that long, honestly. It probably took maybe 4 days to put it together just to edit.
But how long did it take you to film it?
But well, there was a bunch of different filming areas, right? So part in Canada, and then like an interview process and stuff. So the
But
process
those
to
weren't
do
but those but the, like, field stuff wasn't for that video necessarily, it was
um
writing.
so when Critter announced his camp out, I knew I was going. It's no secret him and I are best friends, right?
Yeah.
So it's like obviously I'm going to this thing. And then he and I started talking, and then my train of thought went, so for like a YouTube guy, I'm nobody. Like for real.
I'm
I'm
nobody.
nobody.
I don't
Yeah.
consider my
But
yeah.
like, some of my videos get a lot of views. Most of them don't, right? So, and I'm very thankful for every view. It doesn't matter if it's one or 5,000 or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
But I started kind of seeing, who's coming, right? So Dork on the Road's coming, Travis, Explorer Venture Moto's coming. And then we've got, Slow Eddie's coming and we've got Critters going to be up there, And so I'm starting to like these dudes with massive, massive channels are going to be up there. And I was like, why would anybody watch my videos? Right.
Right, yeah, you kinda
You've got
feel like
all these all the all-stars, right? So if you're anybody, you're gonna go watch Ben's right off the bat. You're gonna go watch Dork in the Road, and then
I
you
didn't
might
even make
watch
a video
Travis's.
from the Giant Loop rally for that exact
Yeah,
reason, like, it just wasn't even
right?
worth it.
Yeah, and it was just like, they're gonna watch Ben, maybe Travis, done, moving on. Been there, done that, right? So I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do, right? And so I've been, um, contemplating for a while, talking with Critter, and Casey and all this stuff. I was contemplating on doing a video about my story before the announcement of this,
Yeah,
but
you
I
always have that
wasn't.
kinda, like, idea in the back of your head, just kind of ruminating.
Yeah, and it was there, but I didn't at the time, I knew I had this story. I wasn't sure if I was ready to talk about that story, and then how I would do it, right? So I had 3 questions, like, 1, I know I'm gonna do it, but am I ready, and how am I gonna do it? So, it just permeated in the back of my head for, like, the better part of 6 months, maybe a little over
Oh,
6
I have
months.
no doubt, yeah.
Yeah, and I was just like, I don't know, and then, the whole premise of this camp out was for men's mental health, right? And so getting there and meeting the people and just kind of being up there, I knew what it was about. I knew the people, some people that were going to be there. And I was just like, I am going to shoot this differently because I think this is the perfect platform and event to tell my story. So I went up there with, I ended up vlogging and stuff and doing some rides. And I'm actually working on a video, which is kind of a, I'm done with this massive, just emotional project. Now I'm back to like, hey, everybody, I'm on the ad again.
Yeah,
Woo-hoo,
right.
right.
I'm probably have to do the same
So,
thing. Yeah.
yeah. Oh, for real. So I just started that yesterday, honestly. And, but looking at it, I was just like, okay, all these guys are coming to this video or to this camp out. They're going to do their own videos. This is time for me to take this environment and present my story. So I went up there with the aspect of more B-roll footage more than the vlogging and the more the A stuff, right? So it was
Because you
just
know you're
more
gonna be
of
talking over it in the background.
right. So I just wanted and I didn't use too much of it. I felt I originally had a lot more motorcycle footage and camping footage, but I felt it was actually distracting away from what I was trying to say. So I
No,
actually
you
cut
you
some
get a
of it
feel
out.
for it of like it's not a riding video. It's
Yeah.
there's times where it makes sense, but there's times where it just doesn't.
Yeah, I think the little bit that I did put in there, it was just more like, you know, because I talk about how writing is like my therapy and stuff, and it's more than just riding a motorcycle for me sometimes. So I kind of get into that with a little bit of like the friendship and the camaraderie. I show a little bit of that, but the rest of it is just me, just chit
Yeah,
chatting,
that's not the story.
essentially.
The story is
Right,
you and your experiences.
right. And then there was a lot of like really happy, cool stuff that went on. So I tried to showcase at the end, like
Yeah.
this side of it,
It's
right?
not all
So
bad and depressing.
right. So I ended it that way, but I felt like when I was riding up there, like a part of depression and going through stuff like that is you take this burden of a secret, right? Like this is my secret. This is my I don't I talk about how embarrassing it was and how ashamed I was and all of this. And you take that and you put it down. You don't want anybody to know and all this. And so, you know, my dad and I are very close, but I didn't want him to know. And he didn't know going up to this camp out anything about it, and it was like I'm contemplating, do I tell him that I'm doing this video or do I just like hear, right? So
Right. Yeah.
yeah.
It's hard because when you're especially when you're in that place, the last thing you want to do is talk to other people about it.
Right. Oh, 100%. And it goes back to the stigmata. We're men. Dude, you're tough, dude. Just don't talk about it. Suck it up. You're going to be fine. Right. Got to get rid of that. Right.
Yep.
100%. And then it's just like, who do you talk to? Right. How do you find the help? I mean, again, it's like the writing ego. Right. You got to find a way to throw away the writing ego. But in this case, your writing ego is a little bit of the ego, but it's also the depression that's trying to tell you, like, you're fine. What do you need? Don't do that, dude. That's
Nobody cares
stupid.
about this bullshit. Just move on.
Right. That's just your
Yeah.
stuff. That's your baggage. Unpack it yourself, kid. So that's essentially what it was. So I put it together and I just went publish. Okay. Go. So yeah, it turned out to be a thing. And like I said, like my dad called me and he was like, I need to talk to you about your video. And I'm like, oh God, here we go. And he just was like, I'm proud of you for putting it out there. And it was like not the conversation I thought we were gonna have,
Good for him
you know.
though. Like that's the response that
Yeah.
you want to have.
Yeah, like, yeah, it was a good response. My mom, she had a good response, and then, like I said, I just the next several days after that video came out, it wasn't too much, but it was too much,
But it was a
you
lot.
know?
Yeah.
I was not ready for that, especially picking up the phone and having, like, dudes crying, like, already, like, "What's up, bro?" You just, "Oh, okay, here
It's
we go."
but it also makes you realize how many people you can talk about these things because almost all of us have some kind of similar experience. Like we can relate. you don't feel like anybody can relate at the time, but then you kind of have that conversation. It's like, oh yeah, there's a ton of people I can go to if I'm having a bad one. Like, it's
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, it's I don't know how to get away from the dude, the proverbial man card, right? And how do we
It's just
start the
repetition.
conversation? It is.
It's
It is.
removing the ego and just being willing to have a conversation like this.
Right. That's the whole thing. And being open and honest about it too. That's kind of the hard part because people don't want to take your flaws and just put them out there for anybody and everybody to look at, right? And that was one of my things too. I even talked about it in the video. I was so paranoid and worried and embarrassed that somebody is going to be like, "Yeah, you're screwed up, man. What, and just start pointing the finger at you and just talking mad shit and for what? Eh,
And that's the only damaging part about it, is that there are still sometimes people out there that is their they act like everyone should be like that, and they're not. Um,
right.
some of the conversations that I have with other veterans is the fact that, the person who's talking the most about being tough is typically the weakest one in the room.
Yep.
And you see that so much with actually strong people. Like, actually strong people are the ones who are struggling with it afterwards. That's human. Like, that's human. That's just who we are. And so the person who's talking the most mad shit about it is the one who wouldn't be able to handle it if they were actually in that situation.
It's the person that may not be able to handle it in that situation, and maybe even the person that needs help the most on top of that,
Oh,
you
there's
know?
yeah, there's definitely some misdirection and redirection of, like, I can't handle it myself, so I'm gonna put it on you. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's a whole nother long conversation.
That no, that really is because I was guilty of that too,
I think we all
so
have at some point, but yeah.
right, right. I don't know, I think, there's a lot of support for me to come out like that. Like I said, Casey was we had conversations because I needed to make sure that she was okay too with this kind of coming out because it was such a dramatic part of her life as well, right? So it was a really horrible part in everything. So she was really good about it. And then, Critter was the guy that was kind of like the love tap on the back, like, you can do this, man. You can do this. That's not how it was, but that's kind of how our relationship was. And him coming out and being able to talk about stuff. And then there's been other people, that obviously we're not the only ones, right? But the
It
more
opens a
the more of us can
conversation.
sit out and yeah, your video, my video, and then Critter's video and everybody else's is just going to be amazing because the more you can see, like the Tuck Project when that comes out, and like I said, the more you find out about people's struggles and then what's really happening behind closed doors and then really how people are feeling and it's just it's quite the conversation starter. And I just listened to a podcast with Jimmy Carr. I was actually on the Joe Rogan Experience, and I was just listening to it, and they were just talking about random stuff, and somehow suicide came up just randomly. I was like, What?" And Jimmy Carr said, I put this up on my Instagram a couple days ago, but it was suicide does not end the pain; it merely disperses it to your loved ones. And I was just like, "That's deep." And that
Which
is
is
so
incredibly
true.
true, and I've had this conversation with people, is probably one of the only reasons why I've never really had a serious attempt, is I always had those people in my life that I knew what it would do to them,
Yeah.
and
That
it's the people that have followed through on it are the ones that aren't thinking about the other people in their lives.
right. Or they're just so empty and they I don't know if empty is the right word, but when I
Hopeless
tried it,
There's a
it
hopelessness
wasn't
part of it, there's an emptiness part of it, there's also just a part
yeah,
of it is wanting the pain to stop. They just want to cease existing. And
right.
which is the most dangerous part of it, because you don't at that point, you don't care what other people think.
Right. And that's truly where I was. I didn't really give two shits about anything
Oh,
at that
yeah.
point. Yeah.
I mean, and that's the
Hit
hardest part
rock
about
bottom.
my friends that I've lost is I can't sit there and act like I don't know what they were thinking. Like, I know exactly what they were going through. I know where they were at when they did that. But at the same time, you're kind of pissed off at them for following through on it because you know that if they had
Right.
just made a phone call, it wouldn't have happened.
And that's dude, that is such a big thing too. And it's just sometimes it's easy for us to say the phone call, but then going back to what we just said, when you don't care, you don't care.
That's the
You
last thing you
know?
wanna do
So
when you're in that place is talk to anybody. So, like, that's the part of
right.
me that I get it. Like, I get why you didn't call anybody because I've been there, but you
Yeah.
also wanna just, like, shake the shit out of them for not doing it because it's like, "You asshole, you're gone now, and I can't call you an idiot for not doing this."
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, dude. I mean, it's such a shit show to be there, you know. Absolutely. And it goes kind of the flip side too. Like if you know somebody that's struggling, again, guide code is kind of hard to be like start striking that conversation, right? I can't come to you with my feelings. That's against guide code. And that's this, and especially when you're getting into like, I can't speak for it, but I've wondered before, is this like a part of the military thing because you guys are so like manly men, you're warriors, you're this, you're that, and does that kind of play into like, I can't talk about that because I also have this persona, but I have the man and I have this and I have that, you know but how do we strike up the conversation to be like,
There for a
hey man,
second.
yeah, oh man, well, here we are again. But, just how to strike up the conversation of each other. Like, hey, man, I see you're struggling. How does this happen? So did I lose you or is you backs? I'm just going to keep going until you start talking.
I still don't got you
Like,
back. There you go.
hey, okay.
Jeez.
Okay.
I lost you
Yeah.
partway through it, I feel bad. I
Oh,
got
dude. It's
most of it. I so talking about, like, in the military, how it is different than, like, maybe civilian life. It's hard to explain because there's parts of it that are easier to talk about because you were in the same situations together, so there's a level of trust and a level of understanding built in,
right.
but it's also hard because you don't wanna be the one complaining about the thing that all of you went through.
Oh, right.
And so
I get
maybe
that part too.
that's where it kinda gets a little bit difficult of, like, we had the same experiences. How can I sit here and complain if you're doing fine? But,
Right.
that's some of just having the time now to realize that, like, everyone processes stuff differently and everyone is in a different place in that process. And so some of us are doing great, some of us aren't doing so great. And the ones that aren't doing so great probably need a little bit more help about it. So some of that I feel like is just kind of the maturity of down the road now. Um,
Right.
so yeah. I mean, initially, definitely, probably you'd get a lot of crap for like being the one guy who's having issues with it, but you kind of get the understanding later on of just like, no, we're all just doing the best we can.
That's important. Doing the best we can, being communicative, being a community, starting the conversations, being open to having the conversations, being honest with yourself, being honest with others, and seeking the help that you need, right?
Yeah,
That's really what it comes down to. And boy, this kind of went took a little
that's
bit
all
of the
right.
corner there, but yeah, it needs
It's the
to have that
topic that I've been
conversation.
dealing with probably the most this year, so it makes sense that we would talk about it. Between Tuck and
Right.
my documentary, like that's pretty much all I've been dealing with is suicide, depression, and veterans issues.
That's a great calling though. The more we talk about it, the more videos that get put out by it. I mean, it's just the more the conversation, the more people see it, and the more that I think people are like, "Hey, man, it's Gucci to talk about." You know,
We had the conversation more than once on the Tuck trip of whatever happens with this documentary, if it saves one person from taking that final step, it was all worth it. All
right?
the difficulty, all of everything. It's all worth it if it keeps one person alive.
Yeah, that one person, a
That's
hundred
all I
percent.
like. Whatever.
I think it's going to be. I think it's gonna be, for lack of a better term, massive.
I
I
hope
see
so.
that film being I see that film being huge. I see it,
I want it to reach as
yeah,
many people that it speaks to as possible. That's my only
yeah,
hope with it, whether if a bunch of other people watch it and enjoy it, fine, whatever. But if it reaches the people that it needs to reach to actually make a
yeah.
difference in their lives, that's what I care about.
I'm right on there with you. I mean, obviously, like you said, like, hey man, if this helps just one person, done. It's worth everything. But I think the reaction of that's gonna be more than one. I think it's gonna I'm just gonna go out on a limb and say, I mean, hundreds. I mean, how could it not?
That's the feeling that we started getting as we were on the trip of like, "Oh, this is actually gonna," like, just with our experiences and the stories people were telling and the conversations that we were having, it's like, this is
Yeah,
gonna be a bigger thing than any one of us, for sure.
100%. 100%. I mean, it's such a just a topic, you know? And depending, like, I don't know. I don't know any insider information. Yes, Grace and I are friends or whatever, but I don't have any inside information. But like in my mind, I like see this at like film festivals and stuff, and
Yeah, I mean, that's the hope.
yeah, I mean, just adding it to as many places as you can and just getting that buzz, and then I don't know, maybe something in the veteran community. There's something there that just, man, starts dinging.
Maybe it
Ding, ding, ding.
resonates. Yeah, the
Yeah,
hope is that it resonates,
yeah, 100%, man. That's crazy stuff.
right?
Well, I think we've been at it for 2 hours, 31 minutes, and 13 seconds, and I think we're starting to get a little bit more of a consistent drag here on the interwebs, so maybe this is a good
Starting to
place.
repeat ourselves a few times.
Yeah, I think this is probably a good place just to end things, so I really want to thank you for coming on. Like we said in the beginning, there's a little bit of tag back and forth between our schedules, and you being out doing your thing and being back here, and me out doing my thing. So I really appreciate you taking the time planning, especially doing it in the morning. That just it made it so much easy for me, and just it seems like it worked out really well, man. So
No,
anything else you want
absolutely.
to pimp?
Thank you so
We've
much for
been
having me. I'm Meerkat ADV on basically everything, so if you search that, you'll probably find me eventually.
just right here,
Um,
right there.
but yeah, I'm gonna be kind of dark on social media for a while, just because literally the last video I posted, I was in Idaho, and that was in July.
Oh
So
wow,
I'm gonna
yeah,
be because I've been
okay.
working on the other project, so that'll be the rest of my life for the next several months at least, and then stuff will start coming out from that probably in February ish.
Do you have a
Um,
name for your project yet?
I have a few rough ideas for it.
Hey,
I'm not gonna give you any of them because I'm not sure what it's gonna end up actually being
right.
called, but
Yeah,
I have
mine
some
changed like
ideas.
5 times. Yeah,
You start having like a little notepad of like ideas. So yeah,
scribbles. Yeah, for real, man. Well, I really appreciate it, man, and, maybe here after your, documentary comes out, we can take a gander at it and then bring you back on, and we can talk about it. That'd be pretty rad.
absolutely. See,
Yeah, man.
and talk about whatever you've been up to in the meantime since also.
I'm not gonna say what I'm doing, but, keep your eyes out in early November for some sort of an announcement thing, just saying.
Nice.
I'll just leave it right there.
No,
So,
I know exactly what that's like. Like, you have these things going and you're, like, not quite sure if it's gonna pay off or not, so you don't wanna say anything about it,
oh, we're
but at the
actually
same
this
time,
is
you're
a
like,
100. Yeah, this is 100% go. There's a lot of moving
"Nice."
parts that have come together already, and, it's just the announcement. Everything will make sense. Everything will make sense
Yeah.
in due time. So, all right,
No, I
brother,
get it.
we're out. Laters.
Alright.